Right, this is going to be another episode, Something Insight here. Obviously, this is, I think it's actually the second one we've done. Is it the second one? I think we skipped the play-ins and we did one last time at the beginning of the brackets. This is the second one, I think.
We did one last Monday as well after play-ins. So we did preview after play-ins. Now we're here after 1 week of the bracket, and then we'll do our next one after finals.
The only thing is, though, the tournament only just got good this last week. Like everyone else.
That's why it was so forgettable.
It's why the biggest joke of all, by the way, is without going into detail. If people don't know, obviously one of the biggest problems, if you're someone who likes esports betting, is there was barely anything to bet on because everything was like 10-1 odds, wasn't it? But what people won't know is this. There was one match. You all missed it. Team Liquid had like 4-1 odds against Fnatic or something mental. And what's mad is, I would have said that's almost everyone should consider that one, but people just ignored it because they were just like, oh, everyone sucks. And we're doing that thing again, which I'm so bored of, Monty. Do you know what I'm so fucking bored of? Is what? I have an amazing memory. When you have an amazing memory, people can't just lie to you and just say a bunch of stuff that never happened. So there's this thing that happens every single fucking international tournament in esports, except the ones where Europe is like goated, like in Counter-Strike, where there's just no discussion. It's the best region forever, which goes like this. Americans will actually go, why do you Euros always trash talk us and talk like you are superior? And it's like, is everyone listening to this? Americans are all telling us that we're all being superior and trash talking. Is no one else listening? Was no one else alive? I don't know. Every second before a minute ago. What are we talking about here? Because whenever that happens, by the way, like what's mad is this. Is there anyone talks trash harder than Americans when they get a fucking crumb of victory? Like, I've noticed they still do the same game every fucking time, and it goes like this. So you ready, Monty? You know what you're supposed to say before Team Liquid beats Fnatic? It goes like this. You're supposed to go, who gives a shit? It's not like Europe's good. It's a one-team region. But you know what, Monty? I've noticed when one team from America outplaces one team from Europe, magically North America's better and the whole region's better. There's no logic to any of this nonsense. It's just fucking nonsense. So here's the thing. I do actually like trash talk. I think everyone should do spirited trash talk, but make it better. Come on. Like for a start off, your trash talk can't be, why is everyone trash talking? That's what we're doing, you idiot. We're in the fucking Colosseum now. Get your sword out or you will be beheaded metaphorically.
Also, it has to be said that it really just shows how NA fans, how far they've fallen in that they are taking a gloating victory over their #1 seed beating Europe's #2 seed.
I know. It's mad, isn't it?
That just says a lot, doesn't it? That just says a lot in and of itself. That this wouldn't, NA fans, this is not even an expected result from them, apparently. So it's worthy.
I'll tell you the obvious one that I can't handle, Monty. I won't go into it because the joke is, this is one of the areas I've realised where there are some people who have figured out Twitter. There's some people who get it like I do, Monty. It's quite cool, actually. There's people who I completely disagree with, but who are in my circle on Twitter, or my mutuals, right? Who say all the things I would argue against, all the stupid NA memes of like, see, it's the Native American import, it's the non-import players that got them this far. Like, meanwhile, you got a team like Impact and Core JJ. But you know what I mean? Like, so I ignore that. I don't let that get to me because actually they're using Twitter, right, Monty? What you do is you attack the point, not the person. So as long as they keep attacking that point, I don't have to agree with it because they're not attacking me. There's no beef, right? But I do think that is mad because here's the weirdest thing of all. If you're going to use the argument, Monty, for Team Liquid, that it's all about having those native players, because by the way, even though Team Liquid themselves went out of their way to market this, they're now trying to act like you're some sort of crypto racist if you mention Jordan is Korean. They go, no, you see, he's from California. It was your team that told me he was fucking Korean, you actual cretins. You bragged about having 5 players. Oh, no, now we're all pretending from day one it was APA. APA was there from day one. It wasn't that fucking other guy that we all pretend, hairy-ass balls who was dog shit in the game. We're all pretending he wasn't there in the fucking game. No, let's all pretend that, gaslight ourselves that from day one, what you did is, just like NRG never did this, by the way, you sat there from day one like, no one else understands how good this APA guy is. I think I will select him because I will develop his talent. By the way, there's no such thing as developing talent. You just put them in the server and they play the game. It's on them to actually get better. I don't know if you know this. So anyway, here's the point I would make. One, it's such a weird angle to take the angle that it's actually those players that are why Team Liquid can win. No, you don't. They are the mid and ADC. By definition, they get the kills. Is this your first date in League of Legends? Did you think the fucking jungler was going to ace everyone in every fight? Meanwhile, the actual players that are cracked on that team are and always will be that you have a top player who can actually go even against anyone because he's a world champion from 10 plus years ago. And then Core JJ, the whole reason you're even here is he had a mad glow up this year. So what I
Another
also
world
find
champion,
weird,
by the way.
but we're just going to ignore that. We're going to pretend like those aren't key positions. Let's see. Top lane in the West and support. Are you having a laugh? They're the most probably important positions you can ever get import to the West. Meanwhile, anyone can click keys, you idiot. Of course, you can have a mid lane to be from there. But here's the maddest angle of all, Monty. Logically, if you're going to talk trash, where's NRG? Where are they? That was the team that you all put your flag to. You all told me NRG's better than all of Europe, including G2. Well, you know what? What time does NRG play? What happened? Did them keeping all that NA talent, Monty, not make them suddenly the best? What's weird, Monty, is, wait a minute, are you telling me that a team with all import topside somehow beat out the amazing NRG who used all those coaches and national? That doesn't make sense, though, because it's almost like one result doesn't define an entire philosophy of the game. It's just one result in it. So, and as usual, we've all the fun of the circus. It's all good. But I do think, by the way, I do think it is banter though. That team Liquid did beat Fnatic. I do think that's funny as well. That is actually straight fire. That is good,
and convincingly as well, and with pretty good performances across the board. I mean, I think it's impressive that Team Liquid managed to make top 6 at this tournament.
Bro, you'll love this because doesn't this, if anything, justify my original point from like fucking earlier this year in winter, which is the reason I was so scared about teams like BDS being good. It's because it's like, bro, if BDS is actually elite in our region, what does it say about the rest of the region? I mean, if people don't know, BDS was taking care of motherfuckers like Fnatic sometimes. Like, that's actually the problem. Team Liquid, the real joke is this, you morons. It might be a feel-good story that APA and Yon are on this level, but just like fucking Busio, they are also the players that then mean you can't go beyond that point. You can get to this level, but can't go beyond it. So the weirdest thing is this. Yeah, you can get props for beating Fnatic because you actually just outplayed them and made them look stupid. But spoiler, Fnatic does that to himself against everyone. Like, the weirdest thing about this is, I feel like I'm the only person who's had a fucking read on Fnatic the whole year. Because I've said to people the whole time, on paper, yes, they are supposed to be the second best, but the reason they never are is because notice how they always play like 90% as good as G2 when they play G2, but then you put them anyone ranked 2nd to 5th, Monty, and they'll play 90% of their level too. Like, they just fucking go to the... It's so weird because that style, like, it actually doesn't scale that much. You just fucking...
So what you're saying is they're always second place in the server.
Somehow they manage it, innit? Like, the amount of teams they can let almost beat them is mental, because when they do play a G2 and their backs against the wall, they will just go like fucking Super Saiyan, won't they? So this is why I've never trusted Fnatic the whole time, boys. I think they actually had semi-frauds, you know. Even though I'll acknowledge they've got some very good players, which is why I think they're able to get in these positions, you know.
I also want to go back to your NRG point, because I think that's a good one. Because both, you have to remember who's not here from NA, right? Nobody predicted Team Liquid to be here. Nobody predicted Team Liquid to be first seed either. Nobody predicted Team Liquid to be LCS champion.
Sure.
But notably, it's NRG who's not here. And the real embarrassing thing for NA is not that Team Liquid is here, because Team Liquid actually did have a solid playoff run, playoff glow up. They have very well coached, really good back row, basically the entire year, great shot calling. So they had a lot going for them that I think made them contenders. And you know, I don't think that they are fraudulent in that they won LCS, but the real fraudulence is the fact that NRG and Cloud9 couldn't beat the fraudulent ass FlyQuest that made it to MSI. That is the real indictment of NA. It's not Team Liquid. The fact that Team Liquid was able to win a title with these players says all you need to know about North America when NRG can't even make top 2, when Cloud9 can't make top 2, and we get a FlyQuest team that comes to MSI, boot camps, and then shows that level of performance. It is terrible signs for NA.
By the way, Monty, I've pointed out on past episodes, like, I was never that big a Noah fan after, like, what, the first 2 weeks of summer 2 years ago now.
Oh, I've been waiting for this. Go off.
Mate, if you ever don't like this motherfucker, and I already had extra reason to, because his personality is complete trash if people don't know. Like, he's a rare example, Monty, of where people go, just be yourself. It's like, yeah, people might hate you for that, you fucking idiot. Maybe you're detestable. He proves that. Like, maybe he should have just fucking... Sorry about that. I'll try better next time. If he did on that, he'd probably be amiable. Because, mate, if you're hating on this guy, this is like a fucking full 7-course buffet. What are you talking about? We're just giving you something every game, mate. And also, I love it because if you wanted him to get exposed, yeah, just put him against like the best ADCs in the world, mate. And just watch this motherfucker get completely made to look like a fool, because it ain't working, mate. It ain't it. Like, he already was on the hot seat anyway for LEC, but I think, like, put it this way, he's gonna have to be amazing in summer if he wants to delete all that's happened at this tournament, because like, he's just not good enough.
Well,
Just isn't a
but
good enough player
here's
right
the
now.
problem. Fnatic seems like they're kind of on the ropes when it comes to budget. Like this is the same team. One of the reasons why their performance wasn't up to par was because they came out like 3 days before play-ins. You know, they didn't have any boot camp. They literally took Riot flights, Riot hotel, the shit that Riot pays for, and didn't do shit in Asia, unlike G2, unlike Fnatic, unlike FlyQuest. Not that it did FlyQuest much good. But anyway, all of these, like Liquid at least, Yun appeared to learn how to play Lucian during this time, which was really important to this actual win. And I'm not trying to say that Fnatic needs to spend the money because, frankly, like whether Fnatic wins or loses this, it doesn't move the needle on their sponsorship. I'm pretty sure the most important thing was just getting to MSI and especially getting through play-ins. Like if they win and play one more best of 5 at this event, sure, it makes the fans happy, but it doesn't actually, it's not a good business decision for them. So if they're not going to make any more money from this, I can't fault them for the logic of not coming out early. But the fact is that they didn't, and Noah didn't look good, didn't have any kind of boot camp to prep up. And on top of
By
that,
the way, Wireless support's playing like the best League of Legends of his fucking career too. So he looks even worse as a result, you know. His spots doing everything.
Right. I mean, and also he did have Trimby before. And
True.
the thing about Noah was he started off at a really good level. Remember, everybody was shocked at like how well he was doing. He was playing aggressively. He was like reckless in KDA, but actually aggressive. But he basically has just been on a long downward slide since that point in time. And now what he's doing is just promising on Twitter that he's going to get better. But my point about Fnatic's budget is who do they replace him with? They can't go get a big buyout. They're not even willing to pay for a boot camp for their team. Like, they're gonna get some bargain basement ADC, which might be better, honestly, at this point in time, with the performance that Noah showed. At least there might be more upside because Noah, there's nothing that says that Noah's ever going to be back to the ceiling that he had when he started.
I mean, it's just been so long, like you say. You know?
Like, it's just, you just haven't seen anything. And like when you have Jun here, who started out a little bit rocky, but in LEC playoffs and now throughout MSI has shown that he's actually a very good support player. You know, his performance, Noah's performance really stands in stark contrast to that. He's not doing much. He's not doing much. So I think it's pretty depressing, and I don't know if Fnatic's going to make a move quickly because they're on the hook for Noah's contract. So I think they're just going to ride this one out, Thorin. I doubt, just due to budgetary reasons, unless they get somebody who's like league minimum, that they make any kind of changes.
By the way, I've actually got some info for you because I did the other day. I released a reflections interview with Kazi from Team Vitality, right? And what will probably surprise people is, even though he's not like very long-winded in his answers, he's just basically like super blunt with his answers. Like he just like, for example, he doesn't even like if he had a former teammate that he didn't think was that good, he doesn't go like, yeah, he was good back then. He'll just sort of be like, I never actually thought he was a good player, and then just move on to the next person. Like, oh, fucking hell! But as a result, though, he drops all like mad gems that are insane. Like, are you ready for one that no one has ever heard before? According to Kazi, when they made that 2022 Vitality, which is one, if you remember, that was Perks coming back to Europe and making like a super team. It was Alfari, self-made, Perks, I think it was, and then like Labrov and fucking Kazi or something. So it was like a lineup that was like all super duper players that's supposed to be all insanely hands super skills, right? Are you ready for what's going to blow your mind, Monty? Okay. Supposedly in the team, Perks wasn't just the team captain and the player. It was his job to coach the team's macro as well as play.
I believe that.
That is so fun. And even though Kazi says he thinks Perks' macro is amazing, he even says it just drained him completely during the whole split. Like, imagine that, mate. Imagine playing the game, then pausing, and like actually, like some sort of fucked up Reginald Bjergsen Fight Club scenario where it's like you just then appear out. You thought, well, now I'm going to have to review this game that I just played in and fucked up. Like, what are you talking about? This is madness. Or like, that is so bonkers, mate. If that is actually true, that just defies belief, mate. That defies belief.
I mean, I think one of those issues is that there are very few people as qualified to discuss macro probably in the world as Perks is, given the scope of his career. So it's hard to find somebody who could do it better than him. And so if he thinks that he's the one who's going to help his team out the most, he might naturally take on that role. You know what I mean? And burn himself out.
It's such an over evaluation of what's possible though. Like there's a reason why, like even when people say, Monty, that Faker coached T1, he still had someone officially in the title of coach who comes in the fucking offices and probably like does a bunch of stuff I'd imagine behind the scenes that he read. I don't think he literally just goes like, pause, Oh no, what the fuck are you doing? I don't think he does that, guys. Like, I don't think there's a video where he's like really coaching like live in effect, you know. Like that's like it. We're using hyperbole when we say coach them.
Well, who knows? Who knows? Yeah, look, I think the Fnatic situation is super interesting. Team, I was pleasantly, I think we were all pleasantly surprised by Team Liquid. I was just happy that Team Liquid managed to shift up their drafts really quickly, because it was that last loss that was so depressing, which is the pick Smolder, do nothing except non-NA teams don't throw, so we can't actually win the video game League of Legends. It was the same strategy that it's like the fucking Game 5 Bjergsen Zillions, man. Worked in NA. You try that shit internationally, you go 06, right? You can't just scale infinitely like you do in LCS. And so I think that was a pretty big fumble for them, especially when it looks like Yun was perfectly capable of playing more. I mean, we knew he was capable of playing Varus, but now the Lucian and the team playing around him was significantly better. And we're smack in the middle of APA's prime champion pool. And for all you Liquid fans out there, you better hope that APA gets a better champion pool at some point in the future, because he's not going to be in a fucking Talia Aurelion Soul Ari meta forever, guys.
You ready to get triggered? They're doing that thing where because your player isn't actually what you want him to be, Monty. Like, here's the problem. I'll just put it to you that if you actually thought APA was what you say he is, you wouldn't make any arguments against our points. You'd just say he's the best. Like, it's why actually, do you want to know a point someone made on my Discord server ages ago? But it's an insane point when you think about it, Monty. Have you ever noticed how people who are fans of LeBron or Tom Brady as the GOAT of their sports never say, well, haven't you watched him play? He's obviously the best. That's never their argument. Because even they, on some level, know that when you watch the screen, of course he isn't the fucking best ever. What are you talking about? Like, the best ever is like this guy, this. You know what I mean? Somehow their brain knows that, like, they can't make that argument. They don't even pretend. So similarly, right, the argument they all make about APA is this, Monty. They don't go, he's the best Western mid laner we've ever had. He's as good as Caps. They should have developed him because he's going to become like a great player, and he can already play like the meta champions. And in time, you know, he'll add more and he'll be there. What they do is they go, you all said he only plays one champion. Again, obviously hyperbole. Like, in the modern day, are we really going to play a semantic game where when we say one trick, we actually mean they only play one champion in the entire game? Like, obviously we don't. Like, everyone knows one trick in the pro scene means you're especially good on that one champion. And then on the others, you're just like, all right, or something, or good. Right? So in this scenario, realistically, he's like, what? A one trick by that logic on like two champions, and then he has like a couple that are good in the meta, right? Because how were you, Monty? The silliest thing about this is why it was so easy for me to pick against Nook in the fucking LEC. It's like, brother, when you watch their game, it's so obvious it's going to die when the champion pool goes. Like, bring in the meta where it is just only fucking Akali and Zoe, and so let's bring that one in. Let's see that one and then see how he does on that. You know, let's just roll that one through, because that doesn't happen at the moment. Nowadays, we just keep staying in fucking a Zaycorky nightmare world. But like, I'm waiting for that fucking assassin meta. Just bring it on. Just bring it in. Bring in all the Yone.
I mean, he's not even an exceptional Azira Corki player. That's the funny thing about this. Like, the Ziggs is kind of his wild card pick right now, but we just live in a world where the Aurelion Soul Talia meta, his two trick champions from his original, like his glow up and solo queue, are the meta. He added the Ari, he added the Tristana, and I do want to be clear. I think APA played very well versus Fnatic. Okay,
of course.
My question is just the longevity. Like, I'm not taking away from Yun or APA playing very well. I thought I thought both of them were like quite aggressive. Were making plays. My question is, where does it? I think Yun might have actually kind of clicked at the next level. It's easier to do, I think, with AD carry, because once you kind of get that in your mind, right? The skills are more applicable to different champions in AD. But with mid lane, I think that I have not seen enough yet to convince me that APA is going to be that guy in a different meta than the one that exists right now. And, you know, credit to him. He really did start a lot of the Aurelion Soul picks around the world, showed that the champion after the buffs was like very powerful, but he was doing this beforehand as well. And that's where you really have to question, you know, Team Liquid's potential limitations heading into next split. Like, Cloud9 has made changes. who knows what FlyQuest is going to do? I'm not too bullish on FlyQuest at the moment, just given that it seems like in any kind of playoff situation, they just choke, like they can't deal with pressure. It's like the entire team collapses. Busio individually collapses, and then like Whippo and Inspired think they have to do too much, so that they overextend and collapse, and we get these really embarrassing matches from them. So FlyQuest has different problems, and Team Liquid at least has composure, and at least they have better macro and cohesive teamwork. But individually in the mid lane, that's going to be pretty important, especially when Jojo Pian, who is a much better mid laner than APA, is going to be back with a new top laner this next split.
Here's how you also know that they don't believe any of these players are actually the next Jensen or Bjergsen or Doublelift. Here's how you know, Monty. Because again, the statement wouldn't be this mid lane is good right at the one tournament where he does internationally. Put those three names together, Monty. So you got Jojo Pion. By the way, I already did a video. He is the real one. He is like the Doublelift of fucking mid lane from Editor. But you're all so blind, you've missed that. And instead, you're all telling me APA and fucking Palafox are the gods. Well, you know what? Logically, they're all three native players. So what you should be saying is not just they're good. You should be telling me this is the greatest crop of mid lane talent ever in the LCS. This is like the equivalent of that 2003 NBA draft that was like LeBron, fucking Carmelo, and D Wade. By your logic, this is the goated one. And you know what? Here's what's hilarious, guys. You do know over in Europe, we've only got like Caps, 3/4 of humanoid that turns up internationally, and then Larson trapped himself in prison. That's it. Like, we don't have mid laners. So logically, tell me that you all have the best mid laners too. You have the best mid laners in the West by that logic. You don't, because as I just said, the real one that the eye test checks out for is Jojo Pion. The rest of them are products of the right team, the right coaching staff, the right meta, as far as I can tell. You know?
Yeah. And that's why, especially, on this show, we've been giving big props to Spawn and the rest of the Team Liquid coaching staff, because
by the way, also killed it at this tournament. They did a great job.
Yeah, there was the brief hiccup. The smolder was not great, but
no, but I even think the way they drafted in the upper bracket wasn't bad, mate. They had some drafts where they had like chances. The problem is they were playing like fucking top esports, like a pretty fucking good team. Like, they did what they could though, mate. Like, considering the pieces couldn't win the game.
I mean, they drafted Smolder, Aurelion Sol, and then they tried to take away Nami and had Nami Jin. I would say that drafting was probably their biggest problem during that series.
What are you going to do,
though? I mean, they weren't going to win anyway, but like Nami Jin actually is a lane that does nothing. And I guess Yun can't play Draven, so we just ended up with Jin weirdly. So, I mean, I think there were some pretty big issues, and, going back to the Smolder, maybe they just thought they couldn't win regardless. And so we might as well just try and see if we can steal a win with 225 stacks Smolder. But I mean, the problem is it gives you no agency on the bot side of the map, and Jackie Love and Mako are in a very good form right now. So perhaps it was desperation, but I like the pivots that they made, into the match in Fnatic. I thought it was significantly better. They were really rocking the Lucian at that time. They just prioritized getting impact on Cassante, which he was very good at. He had a good Ornn game as well. And APA also had some pop-offs. I mean, I thought his, like, the games 3 and 4, his Aurelion Sol and Tristana games were really quite good. So, this is a team that we can't expect anything out of them moving forward. Obviously, like, they're not going to beat T1. That would be truly shocking in a best of 5. And this is kind of the end of the line for them, because basically we have the top 5 teams at this tournament, of which G2 has proved they can hang with, and then we have a giant gap, and then there's Team Liquid. So it's
the fun thing is, I'm with you. Like, the problem with Team Liquid as well is that's also not the team you want to play. Like, how are you going to beat T1? Like, I can't even think of a reason why they would beat T1. Like, you could win a game. Exactly. You can win a game, but how are you going to win? How are you going to win 3 out of 5? Meanwhile, the difference is that G2 top esports one's mad underrated, mate. That has real potential spikes to it. Why can't G2 win that? It's totally plausible from what we've seen so far.
Yeah, I agree. I think G2 will win it. We'll talk about that later. I think I put them as a slight favorite. But anyway, I think when you look at Team Liquid, we go back. How did T1 lose to BLG? BLG had some really great shot calls, especially in the later part of the series. Faker was underperforming. Is APA going to be the guy to punish Faker? Is that what you guys think? I don't think that's true. Like, Impact,
and throw this in, Monty. Whereas BLG did cynically target Faker's draft, they can't do that on Team Liquid. They can't take away the Faker's champions. Well, they're going to do that in the draft.
So if they
You
have
have any for
blue
that?
side, if they have blue side, they could ban Ori Azir and first pick Talia. Like that's the strategy that
That's the best you can go for, though.
like top esport or that BLG was using. And I think that it did show weakness to Faker's champion
Looked
pool.
negative.
And yeah, it looked very good. And because you look at APA and he's not going to pick Azir or Orianna himself. If you can get the Talia, it's fine. And if they ban Talia, Aurelion Sol, well, that's where things start to
Yeah, you
get a little
fucked.
bit weird.
What
I
are you
mean, you
picking
maybe
then?
play Ari after that. You play Tristana after that. Faker plays Ari. Faker doesn't play Tristana. So there's actually shockingly little overlap between Faker and APA's champion pool right now. But you also have to remember that Faker plays Veigar. Veigar used to be an Ari counter, you know,
Sure.
back a couple years ago when it was very prevalent in the LCK and LPL. I didn't like Faker's Veigar pick against BLG, but it doesn't mean it doesn't have applications in other scenarios. So, yeah, I think it's going to be a tough series, very tough for Team Liquid. I think people should be happy about how far Team Liquid has gone with this roster, and we don't have to over inflate them. You know what I mean? We don't have to overhype Team Liquid. This is a good result. This is a pretty good result for Team Liquid, right?
Sure.
They made it. They're probably going to make it. I mean, they could make it just as far as the EU #1 seed, which nobody would have predicted coming into this event, which means they fell short against the top 4 teams from Asia, which everybody thought was going to be the case anyway, and is the expected result. So, you know, top 6, not too bad. Not too bad. Top 4 would be truly shocking because that means that somewhere down the line, with the way the brackets are seeded now with the regions, they would have had to upset either a Chinese or Korean team. Because that's the only way you can get to this point in the tournament, basically. Somebody has to upset a Chinese or Korean team because they're not playing each other in the first round.
By the way,
Which,
I noticed people actually missed when I made my tweet. I think I made my tweet. I think it was. I can't remember if it was before the playoff round began or if it was after the first match or something. But I just said, since he trash talks, I said APA isn't a top 100 mid laner. And everyone like was going, what the hell? How does that make sense? It's like, you're missing it. This is like when I said Gagori wasn't that great in Overwatch League and there was dozens of people could be better. I'm also including at least 50 people who are in China or Korea that you've never even seen play that are in like LDL or fucking Challenger. I'm going to go ahead and assume they're better too. That's just reality, you know? I don't know why that would even be shocking. Like, is that even that crazy to imply that the 100th best mid laner? Like, you know how many people play the
no.
Korean solo queue guys? There's a fucking lot of people. Like, the joke is, there are coaches of LCK and LPL teams who are like high up on Korean solo queue, like higher than like our star players would get. Like, what do you want? Like, they're fucking Smurfs. They're pretty sick at the game, aren't they? You know?
Yeah, it's just a matter of the volume of people playing
Exactly.
and the talent pipeline, and especially in North America where there are very few young people playing League of Legends compared to especially
Of course.
Korea and China, but even Europe, right? I mean, that's the big problem is that basically it's dried up. League of Legends completely dried up at the high school level. There's nobody playing. The barrier to entry is too high with 160 champions, and none of your friends playing or like a desire, you know, having anybody to help you or a desire to play the game in order to keep up with your social group. But in Korea, China, you can go to the PC bongs. Everybody's playing it, so it's easy to get that information. Your entry point is a lot smoother. But that's just a problem with League of Legends, right? This is why Riot's games and Riot's esports and Valorant's going to be this way too, guys, because they built their entire fucking business model around releasing new characters. They didn't do it the smart way like Counter-Strike did with Global Offensive with cases and weapon skins, so that now we just have the perpetually higher every week that goes past, the game just becomes harder and harder and harder and harder and harder to get into. And so basically, APA doesn't have the highest level of competition from up and coming players either. So it becomes very easy to maintain positions in North America and very difficult to improve. Even if you are super talented, it's very difficult to improve in the North American environment, right?
By the way,
Which is why we saw the glow up, by the way, from Team Liquid off of the boot camp.
I'm going to guess that you already on Power Spike, which is already available on the channel, by the way. I'm going to guess you already discussed the like mental fucking double lift take about BLG, right? I'm going to guess you did that already.
Yeah, of course. Tom was very triggered by that.
Yeah, here's the thing. If you've already done that, I'm sure Dom did a great job. So go watch that VOD and I'm sure you break it all down. I don't want to actually comment on that. It's not that interesting. It almost actually beggars belief that this moron doesn't even remember 2023 MSI and the fact that Knight was like the finals MVP and beat Faker there and all those other things that this moron doesn't seem to get. But the bigger point to me is this. This is why, Monty, the JDG Worlds result was so shocking. Because the whole fucking year it was like this, you morons. JDG was always going to beat T1 if they played them. No one could ever have predicted some weird meta shift where everyone would be drawn to copying T1. And then in the semis, I point this out a million times because they can't handle it, Monty. It makes their brain break when you point out that Kanavi int game on Belveth. Because they don't get it. Like, this guy is like a cracked out MVP candidate every LPL split, Kanavi. Literally. Because he's a carry jungler. And I have no joke. I've seen him have games he entered in the LPL. That's one of the worst games of his entire career, mate. That was absurd how bad that one was. So I've always just thought if they'd have gone to game 5 and T1 just won straight up, I don't have a problem with that. But I can't handle it when one player just ints the whole game away. You know what I mean? It's one thing if an ADC mispositions one time in a team fight. This guy repeatedly fucking just fed kills away. So the real problem is this: the BLG T1 result, that was actually what I expected, mate. What BLG to comprehensively handle them. By the way, Knight is a much better player than Faker. Well, there's another thing. The difference is, Monty, here's what I do love about when BLG met against fucking top T1 this time. Finally, they actually did cynically draft against Faker and expose him as actually not having the fucking champion pool. He's like the fucking Korean APA at this point in time. He doesn't have the champion pool to win this tournament. Like he does if you give him everything he wants and you stay right out of his way and you let them build all those comps they have on the whiteboard backstage with Koma. If you don't do that, Monty, if you just say, you know what, instead of, because what I've never understood about Knight teams is all Knight teams go to the biggest international tournament and then just draft like meta champions. And it's like, you've got the guy with the champion ocean, you moron. Anytime, literally anytime his Syndra or something, you pick it. I don't care what the meta is. Like, this guy is that good. Instead, they do the opposite. They're like, give Faker his 2 champions he plays, and then we'll just draft, I don't know, some shite that Knight's all right on. It's like, when you actually do it this way, mate, and you put the stuff he's really good on, and you super hard draft against Faker, this was embarrassing. Like, they were comprehensively a better team.
Yeah. I'll look, Thorin. I'll talk about the BLG T1 match in a minute. But first off, I got to say, guys, if you are tired of listening to Double Lift's takes, I would recommend that you guys get some of the Raycon Everyday Earbuds, because now they have a new feature. The latest iteration has active noise cancellation, which means that you don't have to hear Double Lift anymore. It's a very valuable feature. So if you see Double Lift, you can put your Raycon Everyday Earbuds in your ears, activate that active noise cancellation, and you can just blissfully slide away into your favorite podcast or music instead and save your mind from possible damage that could be inflicted by the ideas that he tries to communicate to you, including the fact that this should be the apex of Knight's career. A man, Thorin, who was almost golden roaded last year, and yet a solo kill on Faker is truly the pinnacle of his existence.
I mean, he's already on 3 championships in a row, 4 in total. He's had the MVP like 3 times. Like, he's won MSI. Like, Double Lift is such a bonehead, and it's so silly. He's so silly.
But you don't have to listen to him with Raycon's active noise cancellation on their newest version of the Everyday Earbuds. I was traveling with them back on the plane to the States for a long time. It works wonderfully, let me tell you. They are sweat resistant, so easily good to take to the gym. Weatherproof. They've got new quick charge functionality as well, and they're constantly iterating. So the latest model is now out. Very comfortable, I have to say. So go to buyraycon.com/elephant today to get 20% off your Raycon order plus free shipping. That's right. You'll get 20% off and free shipping at buyraycon.com/LFN. Buy Raycon, RAYCON.com/elephant. So thank you to Raycon for saving us from Double Lift's takes, which people still hunger after for some reason. So going into this BLG game, though, I mean, I do think that other teams had different ideas about how to approach T1, right? Because Billy switched it up in that they started letting the Senna through. And the reason why you didn't historically let the Senna through was Gumayushi is like 20-1 all time on Senna. Because Keria actually has a variety of different like people were trying to pinch Keria's champion pool because Keria's champion pools look kind of whack. And the thing is, when you give Senna, you give T1 a bunch of options, right? If you ban Senna, then Keria doesn't have that many options. If you ban Senna Ashe, Keria has to play weird shit. If you ban Senna Ashe Nico, like I don't even know what he does. But they decided to take a different approach, which is to like punish Faker a little bit in this series by banning Azir Orianna, taking away the Talia pick. And what happens, why I say Keria can play other things is, you've seen the Tom Kench very famously. You've seen the support Ornn. He plays support Sion. He could play support Sejuani in this situation. Like there's just a lot of stuff that gets unlocked for him with this Senna pick, but they just let it go through and have confidence that they're going to snowball out of the early game and that they're going to take the better mid laner and that Faker is not going to look good. And indeed, the Corki game he played was not great. It was better than Knight's Corki game, which was...
Oh, that was probably one of his worst games ever, mate. That's how this series was doomed. Knight had one of his worst games ever, guys. That was the one loss in the series. Aside from that, we're just clapping him. Just clapping him.
But the real mystery about Faker, Thorin, is why did he suddenly get way worse at laning than he was all spring? Sure, a lot of that was Orianna and Azir, but Azir was also banned out for part of spring, if you'll recall. And his Orianna was incredibly dominant. And it's not just because, there were worse mid laners. No, he hasn't looked good all tournament, guys. Like, he hasn't looked good all tournament. By the way,
he was also getting caught in lane and killed and ganked so many times in this series. He was just like too far up on the fucking wave. It was ridiculous.
All right,
he got brain farts, man.
I will list why I think Faker is not doing that well. And people will look at the G2 game. And yes, he did have a very clutch game on Ahri. But that doesn't excuse how he played mostly like shit.
Oh, no, he just saved himself at the end of that one. Yeah, true.
You have the recency bias because you think about that really sick Ahri play he did on Hans Sama, but that was a highlight, guys. And he had some good moments in the later parts of that series, particularly in that game 5. But a lot of this time, he was not playing well. So things he hasn't been doing well. So he has been caught out in mid lane in lane swap situations where he knows the enemy top laner could be ganking him in mid lane. He either gets chunked out or loses sums or killed. He also, his TP usage has been very questionable. He gets caught out in side lanes. He overextends and dies. He has been the worst player on T1 at this event, which is surprising because he was the second best mid laner in spring. We can have these conversations. People flip out. It can simultaneously be true that Faker was really quite good for most of this year, and then come to MSI. It's just weird the level of his fall off. This is like the inverse of his glow up in LCK playoffs in spring last year, where he's coming off of injury, right? And sure, he has a limited champion pool, but he does a couple of really good things with that champion pool. I just don't understand how he could be so much worse in lane and so less aware than he was for most of spring, because he looks like a different player. And that is very strange to me.
Now you see, though, why I kept saying, though, Monty. Like, even though I understand that if we're shadow boxing how teams can win against BLG, you want to believe it's with late game. Spoiler. How does one achieve late game macro when it's impossible to get to 31 minutes against this team? So, because mate, this is the thing. This team just bulldozes people, mate. Like, you think about how skilled the players are. Like, the joke of this series, Monty, is one of the angles it got me hyped for in the upper bracket final, where we're finally going to get the Chovy Knight one, isn't even just Chovy Knight. That obviously has its own historical reason to be hyped. It's actually because I want to see the fucking Bin versus Keen matchup, mate. Like, those two look like the best Cassante players in the world. They look fucking unbelievable. Like, the teams are so strong. These like BLG's punching power is crazy. Johnny's a fucking monster. Like, they're all just so good, mate. It's why, like, it's one of those ones where I know people want it to be that, like, people like On got elevated by the team being better, and it's like everyone's saying they're all the best. Like, they look like they're all the best. That's what's so crazy about this squad, which is a sign that you've really, like, harmonized, because every player in different games in a series looks like the best player at their role, mate. It's crazy. So fucking good.
Yeah, and the thing is that, a lot of the tricks that got T1 to this point just aren't working anymore, because they spent almost all of spring regular season just blind picking Aatrox for Zeus and having him win every matchup. Then they switched it to blind picking TF and having Zeus win almost every matchup. And then all of a sudden, the TF starts getting banned, or it gets let through. And you know what's a pretty good TF counter, guys? Jack. And you know who's pretty good at Jax? Bin. So, you know, I thought it was almost cocky that they didn't ban the Jax when they were selecting Twisted Fate in game number 3. And the Twisted Fate has other applications as well. So if you watch the way that the Korean teams play, a lot of them have been playing Twisted Fate or champions with other targeted abilities into Lucian, because Lucian has to dash forward to get damage down. And if you have rapid fire cannon on a Twisted Fate, you can gold card him. And I think that's probably the reason why they took Veigar in the mid lane as well, which is basically the idea that if Lucian dashes forward, we gold card him, we cage him, we have a targeted ult on the Veigar, we just blow him up, right, before he can do anything. That's fine in
nice theory.
In theory. But the thing is like you can't get bopped by this Jax in a side lane, because you actually have to have money to buy items and then execute this in a team fight, which is very, very difficult, especially if you're playing into Maokai, which is why the Maokai was so good. Because if you're stepping up on champions like Veigar and Twisted Fate, and the Maokai's there, well, the Maokai ults you and catches you out in the front line yourself. So I really like what BLG was doing. They also just had very good win conditions through the bot side that game. They were owning the bot side. Jun was doing this usual like invade pressure bot side jungle with the Maokai, disrupting owner, making sure that they continued to snowball that advantage, and they got too far ahead. But, you know, it just felt like BLG had answers to everything that T1 did. And T1 just doesn't feel very versatile right now. And even if you get, let's say, T1 into a tank versus tank topside matchup, it eliminates Zeus's playmaking power. Like, what the games we remember on Zeus are like fucking Aatrox and Yone. They're not as, I mean, he got destroyed by Keen in the Zach Cassante matchup in game 5 of the finals of LCK. And he's just so much less impactful on Zach or these other tanks. I mean, he plays Cassante and he's fine at it, but he's not as good as Keen. And so, I mean, it makes a big difference. Like, they don't have the punch out of the top lane that they used to have. Keриa's champion pool is non-standard and sure, terrifying. If G2 gives them Varus Callista, which nobody should ever do, or he gets Ashe, right? Absolutely terrifying. But if he's on, Tahm Kench is great. He might be the best Tahm Kench player in the world. But fundamentally, Tahm Kench as a champion cannot carry you out of these games. I mean, compare, for example, On. So remember, in the last game of the series, BLG played Senna. Compare what you can do with a farming Nautilus. On was fucking insane in game 4. He was farming on Nautilus. Compare his effect on the game compared to Keриa's Tahm Kench. Pretty night and day, right? You can just you have more agency with Nautilus to do things. And apparently Keria, despite at one point in time being the best Nautilus player in the world, has now forgotten how to play that champion. So we can't play it.
I also feel like this is where BLG looked like they were very well prepared for T1 specifically, because if you think about it, for the last few years, obviously you want to play through bot lane, you want Gumayusi to get ahead, you have Keria who has all these support picks that are like going to be unlocked when you do that. But as you said, Monty, if you go watch this series, there's a million times when Owner is pathing bot to try and do a gank for bot lane, but Jun's just there, or he arrives 5 seconds later, or he preempts it and just covers anyway. And when you did that, it was just game over. Like, that really, because if you go back, if they even get a couple of these ganks off, it's an interesting game. Like, suddenly the lane state's different, maybe they get a kill onto Guma, like that would change everything. But when you can't do that, like, they just looked shut down. Like, that's the saddest thing about this match, Monty, is if people didn't watch LCK, like, that was actually like a way more competitive series than you'd expect. Obviously, by the end, it was kind of like pretty sick, actually. There's a world where T1 could have won that. The difference was they were comprehensively outplayed in this series. Like, they themselves looked out of ideas, mate. They look like their draft just looks lost. Like, that game where they have that draft, mate, where it is just TF, fucking Lee Sin, Veigar, Senna and Tahm Kench. What fucking year is this from? What year is that draft? Like, if you did one of those LEC pop quiz, like, would you even guess what year that draft is from? It's like, doesn't even make sense to champions together. What?
I mean, the TF top is kind of a tell that it's now, but yeah, I mean, otherwise you take out the TF and I'd be like 3 years ago. You know what's funny though is that BLG was even banning the Aurelion Soul that game, even though Faker's Aurelion Soul was just terrible. earlier in this tournament. Because here's the thing, it's still a threat if he suddenly learned how to play it. But here's another question, Thorin. Why can't Faker play Aurelion Sol? Surely that shouldn't be that difficult of a champion for him to pick up at this point in time. Hasn't he learned anything from playing Chovy? It seems like it's the perfect Faker champ right now. Like,
this is where the standards are different, Monty, because you're being told by fans that they still judge Faker against all the great players in the world. And last year he should win awards for being the best player in League of Legends. Well, then logically, if he's the GOAT and he's still the GOAT right now, and he's playing in a way that contributes to his GOAT case, why is that an unreasonable question to ask? I mean, if people don't know, again, people like Doublelift wouldn't know this. Knight did do this. He proved that, like, look, I'm not an Azir player, but you know what? If I need to in the finals, I'll play it and we'll win anyway. Faker can't do that. Faker literally knows that he can't even lock these champions in or it's over, which means he doesn't even have the confidence in his own game to make that a possibility for the coach. Because when people do that, Monty, this is the thing about Faker's game. It's so overrated now because, like you always point out, it's all about like clutch play and fucking game reads. And then every now and then, you get like one actual mechanics play. Like he'll do some shit with his hands, like when he did against Ruler at World Semis, or he did that fucking play against Hanwha Life, obviously on Azir. He has the odd play where he'll do a mechanics play, but it's mainly like clutch factor and reads and fucking go for a ballsy play in a game 4 or a game 5. As an actual just straight up mid laner, if we just drop this guy into any random LPL LCKT, you wouldn't even be contending for Worlds. What are we talking about? Like, he's a good player, but he's not some monster. It's why when people are so horny that it's one thing, Monty, if you laugh at Chovy and Knight failing, right? Failing in quotes. But when you actually revel in it, it's like, do you just hate League of Legends the game? Like, what? Like, you do realize eye test checks out way better on these players than that guy. Like, what are you talking about? Like, this guy can't even lane against them. What are you talking about?
Well, it's also that, you know, he has to step up in different metas. This is why T1 is such a weird team in the meta. You know, if Zeus is locked into these tank matchups, who do you think has to carry these games? Question to you guys, if you're T1 fans. Okay, so we're in tank top meta. Keen is a better tank player than Zeus. Period, guys. That's just true. But if you look at these scenarios, like, okay, so we're in a tank top meta. What this means is you have giant ass beefy frontliners, which means that it is in fact possible to play late game scaling hyper carries, which means that the mid lane has to be able to play Aurelion Sol to be threatening in this meta. Because Aurelion Sol is in a very unique spot where his early levels are actually very strong in lane. He sucks at skirmishing. He actually just is terrible. You know, what, levels like probably 4 until he gets Rylai's, and you still need other carries to carry him through the Rylai's phase because all he does is shoot a giant meteor that slows everybody, which is really powerful, but you have to have damage, right? But if you get into these late game scenarios, it's absolutely huge. And like, I don't understand how T1 fans can continue to justify the exceptional strength of this roster when, if they fall into the wrong meta, they just can't play the game against other elite teams. Like, they are the most meta dependent elite team that we have at this event. Think about it. BLG beat them with Senna, but the reason BLG won with Senna was, first off, because I have no fucking clue, and this will torture me forever. Why didn't T1 pick Ashe when it was open? Why are we playing Kalista Renata instead of Kalista Ashe? Why are we doing that? Lane swaps, I think, hurt T1 a bit because they were, they like the standard lanes and they like actually playing into aggressive duo matchups, right? And they like playing through bot side, but they just look really limited. I mean, the Faker Akali and Veigar picks were just not it in games 3 and 4. They didn't take Ashe. Ashe is the signature T1 champ of this roster. It's the signature champ. It's been going on for a year and a half now where Ashe is so broken. Now, Guma doesn't play it anymore, but Guma can play it. So it's a flex pick for them as well, if they need to. It's been so successful for T1. And you opt into this mind game. You try to play Senna 3 games in a row with Tahm Kench. You have no agency on Keria. On comes in with it and shows what you can do with Senna and a different farming support that apparently T1 can't play. Right? And then you have a tank top lane matchup where Zeus can't shine and Faker's champion pool is totally exposed because the first 3 bans are Azir, Orianna, Talia. And then he has to wait because he can't play Tristana. Wait to see what Knight does. Okay, here's my counter pick. It is Akali. Like, what the fuck, man? You cannot play the game like this at top 4 at MSI.
Also, have you noticed how almost every player on T1 who's in a traditional carrier role just has a meta champion they can't play? Not as in they're bad on it, they can't have it in the draft. Like, this is some fucking whack shit, boys. This is supposed to be the best team in the world. They're the world champions. It's why, I'll give you a spoiler, guys. At the end of this year, if T1 does what it looks like they're going to do now, and go 0-4. So they do the fucking, I don't know, bronze road, where you don't win LCK, you don't win MSI, you don't win LCK again, and then you don't win Worlds. I'm going to do a video, and it's going to be called, are you ready? Good job you're there, Coma. You seem to catch all these strays, mate. It's going to be called How T1 Threw Away the Greatest Possible Parlay in League of Legends history. Because what I would point out is, you had the World Championship roster with Faker, where some people still had belief in him, and you had Carrier. Bro, you could have just done like a 1 or 2 player pivot, and you could have had the team to run the table this year. People like GenG could be like, this sucks. Why did Faker get all the good players? Instead, if you're people like BLG and GenG, you're loving that T1 ran this roster back. What are you talking about? They only can ever be the best in very specific meta windows where everything just like coalesces perfectly. Meanwhile, you could argue the opposite. For people like BLG and GenG not to win, you almost need everything to go wrong. You almost need every single like fucking clock strikes 12 fucking Friday the 13th. You need everything to go wrong.
I think what's so weird about this T1 roster is that, you know, what we praised JDG for was basically being the best standard team in the world, or the best standard team ever, if we're being honest, right? The thing about T1 is that they can never play standard. They can't do the most common League of Legends compositions of all time, which is like Enchanter or Engage support, plus tank top laner, plus high agency early game jungler, plus mid lane carry. They can't do it. They can't do it, guys. It's not, when you can't do that, you're basically relying on all of your weapons being off meta or like weird in some way. And so if teams can get the right angle onto you, like BLG really had their number, it becomes really, really fucking hard to win. Especially if your individual player level just magically dips like Faker does from time to time at this point in his career.
And as you say, by the way, the biggest giveaway is if you just don't have agency for Zeus, like their game just fucking falls. It's like a half as good a team, isn't it? Like they have to, unless you have a carry potential at a top lane, T1 just can't win, mate. They can't win a tournament like this. Come on.
Yeah, and especially if we're just going to blind pick, or he's facing other really good top laners.
Oh, he's facing studs. Yeah, of course.
I mean, 369's been kind of underwhelming at this event, but I mean, he's still one of the best top laners in the world. So I think it's really rough. Maybe this shifts back into T1's favor, but or Faker regains his form. But based on what we've seen so far, I mean, he was the worst performing mid laner versus Caps as well. Caps.
Oh, Caps would ironically clapped him, yeah.
You can make an argument right now that Caps is actually the best or the second best performing mid laner at MSI. That is a legit argument, because Knight hasn't been the biggest carry force on BLG, and Chovy's had some kind of so-so games. I don't think that's actually crazy. I don't think that's an actually crazy claim. Cream also has looked pretty rough in his first international showing. You guys will look at the Corki and the Tristana games and be like, wow, but I mean, Ari's one of his signature champs, and he's done nothing on that pick. In fact, he's been actively bad, missing skill shots left and right, playing very poorly. So Cream hasn't been the player we expected. I would say Knight and Chovy also haven't been the players we expected yet. I think they'll get there, but Caps has been rolling people. He's at a weaker
that's
field.
also what makes this format way better as well. Think about the old MSI where you just got to semis, best of 5, then there's a final, that's it. Right, wrap it up, go home. You want to get to see 2 fucking massive series. The best thing about this one is, like, if BLG or GenG, whichever one makes the final, they'll have already played 3 best of 5s just to make the final. And then whoever comes from the lower played, like, you get to see so much sample size. You don't have to worry about like one series making someone look better than they are. Like, you can't hide in this tournament. That's what I love about it, mate. Like, it'll actually expose who is good and who is bad because you play so many series. So I think it's dope. I'm glad people have finally figured out what I did actually predict when I even saw this announced as the format. It's easily the best format in League of Legends. This shit's on Worlds, mate. Like, think about that series, the BLG versus T1. right? If that's Worlds, Monty, that's a bomber of a series because it wasn't that great a series, and that's it. T1's out because there's a lower bracket. You're like, hey, I'll tell you what, I'd certainly like to see the draft if they run that back in the lower bracket. If they meet like a lower bracket final, wouldn't that be interesting? That'd have all sorts of fucking inferences and questions we could answer. And by the way, a chance for T1 to prove themselves. Maybe they come up with something.
I mean, and by the way, who's upset by either T1 versus Top Esports or the rematch of T1 versus G2? Who's upset by that if they win this next series versus Team Liquid? Nobody. Those are going to be bangers. And there's a real shot G2, if G2 could beat TS, they win versus T1 as well, and they secure top 3.
Yeah.
I mean, it's absolutely possible.
I even think that's the sleeper storyline people are missing, Monty, because they keep getting upset that G2 didn't win. And then Fnatic had all those close games, but they couldn't beat the Asian teams. What they're missing is this, as you say, dude, it's not implausible. There could be a world where G2 could come third at this tournament and only be behind the absolute 2 best teams in the world. Like, isn't that what everyone dreams of? Isn't that what we all want to happen? Wouldn't that be fucking awesome? Now, look, there's still look, if they go to Worlds, I imagine the top esports and the JDGs in the world will be better than them eventually. But that would be pretty cool to have like a legit tournament run, because I'm with you. They absolutely could have beaten T1. Like, that's why part of me thinks if they could just get past TS, that's a fucking spicy lower bracket match right there, right? The rematch with T1. Because I have to say, if I watched that BLG series, I'd be even more confident if I'm there. Like, yeah, we could probably get more cocky in the draft.
Yeah, and they just seem to be overall in better form, right? And I think the top esports matchup is not terrible for G2 by any means. I think that series is going to be really tough to call. Obviously, you're concerned, if you're a G2 fan, you're concerned about Jackie Love and Mako, because if anything, the bot lane has been kind of underperforming, and the question looms like, if you ban Mickey X's Poppy, are they as good? Because that has been a crutch for them, and Mickey X has been fucking amazing on that pick.
Yeah.
But also, we saw how it's gone with Mickey X this year when he hasn't been on Poppy. You know, it doesn't always go well. Hansama is not having the greatest performance of his life right now, but that's also counteracted by the fact that on G2's side, Caps has been massively outperforming Cream, and Broken Blade has been really good. So, you know, 369's a monster, but 369 has not been a monster at MSI. And you wonder, with Broken Blade's wacky champion pool, you know, there's a lot of stuff going for them. I don't think G2 is going to run back some of the less successful picks like the Kog'Maw. You know, they do a little experimentation, but the Yasuo picks were pretty good, right? The Zac feels like it's must ban versus G2, and I think G2 is starting to show that you kind of run out of bans at a certain point in time. Like, you got to get rid of the Zac. Maybe you don't have to get rid of the Rek'Sai, but there's also the Draven if you don't play it for Hansama, which can be very annoying. Now you have the Poppy to consider, which is really irritating. You know, G2 has made blunders, but on the whole, like, you have to, again, credit G2's coaching staff. I talk about this a lot. Teams just drop the ball at level 1 all the time. Level 1 is an amazing opportunity to get advantages. G2 is the only team that understands this. By the way, Thorin, for some reason, G2 is the only team ever to punish Faker for the ward he puts down.
Oh, yeah, true.
Every single game.
I saw the clip you did for it, yeah.
Yeah. If you guys have been watching my VOD reviews, every time I talk about T1, I call that ward the Faker ward. I call it the Faker ward when other teams place it, because it's just there every single game at Raptors. He puts it down, probably like sometimes, like usually between like a minute 10, minute 20. It's usually when it goes down. He gets in there, and G2 just 5-stacked it and hilariously killed him. And then there were mind games the rest of the series on this pick that were really entertaining. But it's like, why is G2 the first team to do this? But to G2's credit, they also do a bunch of other stuff. They're like, okay, Zeus, you have Twisted Fate. We fucking take Yasuo into that, one of Broken Blade's all-time pocket champs, right? In the top side. He's played it versus Gnar. Turns out pretty good into Twisted Fate pick a card as well. Broken Blade has some really, you know, has had some really good games on that champion. Now they also do weird shit. Didn't like the Lilia. Turned out it wasn't effective. Like, they had a lot of triggers with the Rel, with you know, the knockup from Hansama's Kalista ult to trigger Yasuo ult, and you think, well, if we can get a big sleep on them with the Lilia from range, we're going to set up like the Mega Wombo. Didn't actually end up working out that way, so the Lily pick looked kind of silly, and Lily was also really outranged by the composition that T1 was running. But you know, you bring it back, you don't give up on that, and you win a game later on with Vi in the jungle. And then, you know, obviously there was the Kog'Maw incident. Obviously there was the Bel'Veth incident where, you know, Viego and Xin Zhao are up and you pick Belveth. Clearly, again, that was because they had that level 1 planned out that went badly, but you got your bot lane super ahead. And people, the wackiest thing, Thorin, I hate some of these takes about itemization. So should Hansama have built LDR instead of Bloodthirster? Yes, obviously. Was Zeus in any danger of dying at any point in time? No. Was LDR the factor that was going to win this game? No.
No,
Was picking Viego or Xin Zhao a factor that could have won this game? Yes. Sure. Was having not overextending in the mid lane and committing suicide by G2 into T1's jungle. Like the actual plays were bad, guys. The Belveth pick was much more important to the game because Belveth did absolutely nothing in these team fights because she got behind. Whereas had this been a Xin Zhao, at least he could have zoned with his ultimate. You know, a Xin Zhao with 0 items can still zone, guys. Right? So, I mean, the Viego can still get resets if you can actually kill somebody, right? The Viego feels a lot more useful here. So, I don't know. Like, the pocket picks from G2 are their strength, but you have to take, you know, you're going to take L's as G2 sometimes because they run different champion pools. And Thorin, the thing that I hate about people's takes about the West versus Asia is it goes like this. So some people are like, well, you know, why didn't you play meta G2? You could have won if you had just played the meta. And then the other argument is, well, why are we just copying the Koreans all the time? We're never going to be as good as playing the meta they are. G2 is trying not to copy and do innovative shit, and they're actually winning games and doing it. And sometimes, guys, when you play off meta or you experiment, you're going to have whoopsies, or you go back to pocket picks. And G2, you know, they're very memorable losses because they're weird losses. But you also have to say, like, this team actually gives a shit about throwing curveballs. This team actually gives a shit about level 1s, other phases of the game that nobody else in the entire world, even the best teams, don't spend a lot of time on. And so they are finding their advantages. They took T1, the reigning world champions and number 2 seed from Korea, to 5 games and almost won. They actually, in spite of everything that happened in that 5th game, they still had a chance to win that game.
Oh, that was an epic game. Come on. That was also a banger series. It was a great series to watch. Yeah.
Yeah, like, so, I mean, you look at this and you can say, okay, well, I would have done these things better. But the Viego comp is a much more, or Xin Zhao is a much more meta composition. And yeah, I think it would have made a big difference in that game. But also, you just have to take the good with the bad. And you can't have it both ways, guys. Decide if you want Western teams to play the meta or to try and invent their own meta. You have to make that decision because you can't get mad at G2 for trying to invent their own meta if you've been complaining that slavish adherence to the Asian meta is the reason why Western teams can never beat Asian teams. And I think there's truth to that.
You're always going to have that problem. Sadly, the reason why I know you'll never beat people when you bring up that topic, Monty, is because I've had this eternally in Counter-Strike the whole time, where when there's a 7-map pool, people for real just say it as though this was like a clever, insightful statement, like, what the hell? You're supposed to be a professional team. You can't even play 6 maps. And I always go, no, let me just correct that sentence. You can't play 6 maps and consistently win against the best teams in the whole world on those maps. Like, if you understand the rest of that sentence, it makes perfect sense why I can't do it. In fact, spoiler, can you even see how when you put in the rest of the sentence like I do in the square brackets there, it not only becomes completely logical, but it even becomes a logistical issue, Monty. Because logically, if we have, let's say, I don't know, crazy 20 top teams all trying to be the best, how can we all win all the fucking time on all the maps? Only a few of us can obviously win, can't we? Whoever the best teams are, they're going to win loads on all the maps, and the ones that aren't as good are going to win slightly less. It's going to keep going like a sliding scale until you get to like the 15th best team. And spoiler, it's going to look like, notice the way I phrased that, it's going to look like they can't play all the maps, but that's only when they go against the best team. Like, the real thing that irritates me here is this. When we say earlier, Faker can't play those champions, of course he could. If I drop him in an LCK Challenger game, he could pick half of those champions and probably be good. He'd probably carry the game. It wouldn't fucking matter. But the point is, he knows himself there's no point me dropping this champion into a game against Knight. Like, what would the point be? I'm just going to get completely giga clapped. Jun's going to fucking gank me 24. Like, He knows that, like, in that scenario, in this one setting, I can't play that champion. So I think the same thing's always going to happen, Monty, because I agree. Like, the real problem is this. G2 actually does exactly what you would want from a Western team. Bearing in mind, you're almost never going to get the G2 2019 thing where you're just actually better than the Korean team. Like, that team could have just played something and actually, well, they were actually better. Bear in mind, you're not. Normally, you're like this team. You're like this far off, but it's sizable enough you'd lose if you played 5 straight up games, right? The logic goes you'd probably win 1 or 2. So what you want to do is this, Monty. You want to be able to play standard for 2 or 3 games in the series and then hope you get one nice draft, one weird pick that steals you that game. Because here's the thing. Everyone knows in this series, for example, if T1 themselves didn't wake up, you could steal 1 extra game with a Mickey X Poppy,
G2
of course.
3-0'd this series. The G2 almost 3-0'd this series,
Sure.
like legit. I mean, they had every opportunity to win game number 1.
Yes.
So, I mean,
So I love the way they're coaching this team. I think they're doing a great job, mate. They're just picking between the weapons. It's awesome.
Yeah, and like, yeah, the weird picks 4 and 5 did not help them. Like, I think we can definitively say that, but I respect the balls to do that. I mean, they were on match point twice, and they tried to close it out.
Remember,
like
there could also be a world, Monty, where, for all we know, they played in scrims a whole fucking ton before their bracket was announced, and they saw that T1's insane on some of the shit that they were countering. Like, you know, there's also, like, that information could be factored into the draft too. Maybe they knew they couldn't win certain straight-up matchups, you know?
Well, the other thing that's interesting too is, like, are we actually sure that T1 got any kind of read on G2 as a result of this series? Because the weird picks make them very uncomfortable to draft against. And I don't think they really figured out G2. Whereas now G2 has seen what happens when T1 gets Faker's champions banned and, like, Talia first picked. So now you're kind of like looking at this and you're saying, well, we do have this rematch. Maybe G2 actually has a better read on T1 than T1 has on G2. I think that's
how
not
deep
insane
the
to
Caps
say.
champion pool could go. You could absolutely fucking pinch Faker. You could just see, like, go then, pick something. First, pick something. And by the way, there's even an angle if you're Dylan Falco. Surely you're loving that, right? Leave Faker, Monty, with the 1 pick he can play, force him to pick it early, and then you build your whole counter comp. Like, that sounds like the dream right there. What Western team gets a chance to do that? I think it's right there. That chance is just waiting for you. It's dangling out in front of you.
Yeah. And, like, you're not gonna, I mean, I disagreed with the Renata Glask pick that they had with the Cogma. Like, I didn't understand why they didn't just go back to Cog Braum, right? Versus some of the Engage versus the Varus. Like, seemed pretty good. And then they got counterpicked by Bard, who's really good into Renata Glask. So I don't know. The whole thing felt pretty weird from G2. It was not even that, I mean, they were picking champions that made sense a lot of the time, but then they weren't even following their own kind of, you know, their own history of how they have drafted in the past successfully. So I don't know. It was a weird day, but I don't think that precludes G2 from coming back and actually performing very well. And it's like I said, guys, people were in my power rankings, I put G2 as the 8th best team in the world, and people were saying, Monty, they're not the best. They're not in the top 8. I said, yes, they are. Like, I firmly believe that this G2 would beat D+ Kia. You know what I mean?
Sure.
They could beat Hanwha Life. I don't think that's outrageous to say. Do you think that this version of G2 couldn't potentially take down, like, JDG, NIP, FBX? Like, I think they can. So, I mean, people were saying, oh, Broken Blade isn't going to perform internationally. I pointed out that at last MSI, everybody said that about Broken Blade, and he was arguably the best performing player on G2. He actually has stepped up internationally, and he's looked really good at this event, even against some of the best top laners in the world. So credit to G2. I mean, if anything, it's their bot lane that has been struggling, right? Now, there are very good bot lanes at this tournament as well. But I think, like, you could imagine an iteration of G2 if Hansama can't get his shit together where they replace him with another AD carry. Like, people talk about Carzzy being on this team. Seems pretty good, right?
Fire, wouldn't it? Think about what that bot lane would be like, mate.
Right. And so I think G2 is incredibly good right now. And I think criticizing them for attempting to play the way that they play and the way that they've seen success playing and the way they almost beat T1 playing is pretty nuts, in my opinion. So I think G2 looks strong. They're definitely a top 8 team in the world, guys. And with Caps' performances, like you look ahead to the top esports match and you look at that Cream versus Caps matchup, and you're like, this is actually an angle to win in a best of 5. This is an angle for
No,
G2
I
to
mean,
win.
the point I made when I did a Substack piece was that's one of the rare times you're ever going to get it, where Caps versus Cream is favoured to Caps. Like the Western players should actually be the better player in that matchup. So that's right. There's a win condition, mate. Like I would predict Caps to perform in that BO5. I don't know what Cream will do yet. He's still a fucking rookie in this sense.
Yeah, and he hasn't even been good on his Cream champs for the most part, and also weirdly good on Corki.
It looked like he was very pressured to me when I even saw like the interviews, his body language. He looked very pressured in this tournament, quite frankly.
Yeah, it's also probably the fact that he's on home soil, right, is increasing the pressure probably pretty significantly. But, this is why we didn't predict Top to win MSI, despite being a very good team and a better macro team on average than BLG, is because you just can't count on him having some crazy first international performance. So,
Thing is, though, it's impossible to underhype the next match, though. I mean, it's not actually the next match in order because they do low bracket, but that upper bracket final is literally the dream that I've been waiting for 4 fucking years. 4 years.
The Chovy versus Knight dream.
Yeah. It's finally here, and they're both really good. Like they're basically the reason it's perfect Monty is it not only could potentially decide who wins the tournament, but it's sort of who is the best player in the world, right? Like we just get the straight up face off. So may the best man win, right? Just put him in the server. Let's see who's better. The dream.
Yeah, it's great. All right, before we get into that, guys, gotta talk about another one of our lovely sponsors here on Last Free Nation, and that is Manscaped. Of course, they're back once again, and it's time for summer. So you may be outside more, maybe you're at the beach, perhaps it's time for a little grooming. And you can get with their all-inclusive Performance Package 5.0. That includes their lawnmower, which, of course, we've talked about, great for trimming your balls, but they've got comb attachments. You can trim any body hair with it. So it works really well. I've tried it myself. I've enjoyed it. My wife has been appreciative.
And the tech is real on that. Like that's the sort of thing where normally I would never even try it because I'm not being the one who's the first person to get nicked by that blade. But it doesn't actually. It's actually really. It is legit. Like they've sort of mastered that technology now.
Yeah, it's really good. My wife enjoyed the results, is what I will say. And also with their Performance Package 5.0, you can get their Weed Whacker, which is a nose and ear hair trimmer as well. Comes in a super nice case. They also have lotion, like post-shaving lotion, which I found to be quite refreshing.
That's actually pretty good. Yeah, if you ever get like that horrible feeling where your skin feels chafed, it's really good at soothing that, actually. That's pretty legit, that stuff.
Yeah. So this is great. Manscaped makes really good products, really good trimmers for all parts of your body, not just your nether regions, but very effective there as well. And if you guys have been wanting to try it, you can get 20% off plus free shipping with the code LFN at manscaped.com. That's 20% off plus free shipping with the code LFN at manscaped.com. The summer sun is here to stay. So trust Manscaped to keep your pubes at bay. Thank you, Manscaped, for that excellent read. Never shy, Manscaped.
The underrated one is the Weed Whacker one, because especially, spoiler, here's the thing, boys. I know you all think you're going to live forever. Once you get over about the age of 30, that's one of those weird things you just learn about the human body, isn't it? It's like when you're young, you never ever notice nose hair. It does actually, as you get older, grow though. And so when you can just get rid of that shit really quick, it's weird. It's way nicer. Because I used to get that thing where I'd be thinking like, so someone caught in my nose, and it's like, no, you just have a hair that's really long, but it's like it's fucking wrecking you. You can't get rid of it. So that's actually also, again, super safe. Doesn't nick you at all. You can just go all around like that, and it'll take it all out. It's mega.
Also, Manscaped does do shipping internationally to a lot of countries in Europe, so very crucial for you guys with our audience. But yeah, it's been great. Really enjoyed using it myself. It's a sponsor that I've wanted for a while, so really happy to get Manscaped. And also all the stuff charges off of USB-C chargers, so it's really, really easy. They hold a charge for a long time. Everything can be used in the shower as well, which is really nice. You can go, and it's really easy to clean. So yeah, great stuff. All right, let's talk about the Chovy versus Knight banger, the treat that we have been waiting for many years, because Riot, of course, in their infinite wisdom, denies us international tournaments. So in spite of the fact that we've had very long careers for both Chovy and Knight at this point in time, and very long careers where they have both been not only individually good, but on good teams and on teams that have been going to international events, we just haven't seen the matchup because of the formats are dog shit. Now we finally get it. And you know what, Thorin? I think we're going to get it twice. I
No,
think
I
we're
do.
gonna get it
That's also
twice.
what's great is, yeah, my hope is that you just get two of the best series of all time. And by the way, when a series is as good as this could be, I don't even pull for one team. Just let whoever's better win, mate. Let's just have some fucking awesome League of Legends at the peak level. There's the other thing as well. Even though there certainly were years in the past where like they were the two best players or like best mid laner candidate, etc. The difference is sometimes it was more tenuous. You also, in some ways, have got the movie fucking like storyline where like they're both peaking as well. Like they're both at this insane career peak of a bazillion domestic finals. They're the MVP. They've just won those finals. They both come off teams that should be able to Golden Road, but they haven't. Like, if anything, by the way, there's also a world where one of these two teams can Golden Road. People are
Oh,
ignoring that
absolutely.
factor. Like, we've got two candidates for it this year, guys. It's actually fucking six. So no, I think it's amazing because I also think if you look at it, like they've neither player was as good in the past years. They actually have both managed to incrementally get better year on year. And right now they look like they're at their absolute peak. Like the funny thing is, you'll follow all the shows. On all the shows, even though, for example, famously Dom is like an LPL admirer, he always says Chovy's the best player in the world. Like to him, like eye test, he checks out. But I'll tell you what, there are a lot of people who are LPL fans who also think Knight's like just as good as him and might be better.
Well,
So
I
we
mean,
want to see it.
it's reigning LCK versus reigning LPL MVPs, and like you say, this could actually set up a golden road for either of these
Yep.
teams. Like, we could just see definitively who's going to be the best team in this year. They both have just mega star-studded rosters. Um, you know, Chovy might be the better mid laner at this point in time. But BLG probably has the best bot lane in the world right now, which is not true of GenG. Keen and 369 are both ultra versatile role players within their roster, equally capable
Been a
of
bin.
tanking or
Been a bin.
carrying.
Yeah.
Oh, Bin.
You
Yeah,
said
yeah.
369, but you meant bin.
Sorry.
All
Yeah,
good.
yeah, yeah. But Bin has been playing a lot more weak side this year,
Yeah,
guys, which has been interesting. So he's
sure.
shown kind of a different dimension to his play, which has, but he's also super dangerous on some of these pocket picks. Keen is like the wild card that can counterpick you with very strange matchups and is like super deep championable. We saw it again, guys. It didn't work because GenG played badly, but it was funny because I was doing my VOD review the previous day and somebody was like, does anybody play Rise anymore? And I said, yes, Keen does into the Rumble matchup. He will do it. He did it. He has very strange pocket picks in certain matchups that he likes to play. So that versatility out of the top lane is absolutely huge for GenG. And they've been playing into it. Like Canyon's been playing mostly the top side of the map, and like their bot lane's been weak siding. Canyon's been really active in topside jungle and topside jungle invades, which is exactly the opposite of BLG style of Jun kind of going into the bot side jungle. So it's a really, really fascinating dynamic, I think, that we're going to see between these two teams. And it's going to be a huge banger. Like, it's very exciting that we get this matchup. And you know what, Thorin? We got all the matchups that we wanted to see. We got GenG versus BLG. We're getting top esports versus G2. We're getting T1 versus BLG. This is possibly shaping up to be the best tournament in League of Legends history. Like, it sounds crazy to say, but
I mean, put it this way, even though I understand why Western fans want G2 to win, the real dream here probably is this, guys, that you let G2 beat top esports, but then T1 beats them, and then the loser of the upper bracket final beats T1 to just both of them put T1 away, and then you have the rematch in the final. Like, wouldn't that be the best script possible? And then the winner just has the chance at the Golden Road, like we say.
I mean, basically any result is going to be good this week. And this is the advantage of Riot, seeding in the way they did with not having, inter-regional competition in the first round of the bracket. So the reason why this might be the best tournament ever was we thought all of those were probably most likely to be 3-0s, but we actually got 2 banger 5-game series in the upper bracket quarters that couldn't have happened on paper. And what's going to make this potentially, if the rest of the bangers are actually bangers, right? The predicted bangers are actually bangers. We got some bangers that were not predicted, and we get this double limb format, and we get the top 4 teams probably in the world right now, all competing against each other, and we get a G2 that has been overperforming relative to expectations coming into this tournament. And maybe even a Team Liquid that can take a game off of Team T1. I think this becomes like, if we get a 5-game final or we get 2 5-game series between GenG BLG, it's probably the best LoL tournament ever.
And if you're someone who's not from League of Legends, I know the big problem they all have, Monty, is they all try to like look in on Worlds, and then they'll just be looking at like, what? It's just Weibo team, the second best team. And you're like, not even vaguely, but that's just the way the tournament played out. The difference is not only have you got all the best teams from their regions here, like they are actually all performing up to par. Even NA, the joke is all the number 1 seeds are actually killing it right now relative to their scale. But also think of the names. Like You have got all the names. It's Chovy and Knight and Caps and Faker. Like, these are all the biggest names in World League of Legends. So it's also like the marquee factor is crazy. Like, I hope, bearing in mind Theon works for Riot right now, I hope there is some like insane video coming for like Chovy versus Knight now. There better be some content piece coming. Otherwise, what are you doing over there? Like, you got to live for this, mate. This has got to be like what you've been waiting for years for. Come on.
I think though that in general, at least to the international audience, Riot has done a very bad job
Well, of course.
portraying Knight and Chovy historically. It's always a chance to redeem yourselves, though. Like, this is a great time to start playing that up. But, unfortunately, I think a lot of the content that Riot has made, they have relied on the crutch. Because remember, it's a lot of the LCS people who are doing, the international content. And those people, just like they did in the LCS, they were incredibly reliant on certain LCS players to drive the narrative because they were so fucking bad at doing like helping. That even though I really enjoyed like the all roads lead to me Faker promos last year, when they cut those promos, I thought it was really good, but they're still really reliant on Faker. And they haven't done the good work of like building up some of these other international stars over many
Oh,
years.
Monty, are you ready? Here's what will trigger me. Just get ready, guys. If you hear this on stream, I'll make a tweet instantly when I hear it. If they have the fucking gall, if T1 plays against G2, Monty, to do that narrative that, like, where you talk about Faker, like all of T1 is Faker, and they were there the whole time winning championships in like 2015 or whatever, like, I'm going to lose my mind because I'm so sick of that narrative still existing. Like, they still talk to this day like this is the squad that won like those 3 early worlds, mate. It's it's only Faker, and even he ain't that guy anymore. Like, I can't believe they still rely on that narrative. It's so whack, mate. So
I mean, they are keeping on doing the thing of like Fnatic doesn't lose to NA teams.
That's a good one.
What are you guys talking about? Like, most of the players have changed.
Yep.
What the fuck does this have to do with anything?
Mate, it's like there was a great saying they used to say in fucking the NBA like that. They were like, if you were on like the Celtics when the Celtics weren't good, Monty, they'd say, Larry Bird isn't walking through that door. Like the players you're thinking of from the Celtics don't exist. Like, yeah, I'm with you, mate. Like, they just got humanoid and he wasn't even on the classic Fnatic, you fucking morons. Like, they got nothing. It's not even reckless anymore, for fuck's sake.
I also love when fans do, when I complain about this narrative shit with teams, and they're like, well, in traditional sports, that's what they do too. They talk about, and I'm like, it's garbage there too. What the fuck are you talking about? It has no bearing on anything. It's just shit narrative.
Bro, the worst ever was the Patriots, because I think the whole reason why fans don't know it was Bill Belichick is because they keep saying like, well, the Patriots, of course, they've been winning since year back. It's like, bro, there's like one person who's on the team still. Like, the guy who won the early rings is only Tom Brady. That's it. A lot of people probably don't even know. Fucking Edelman wasn't even on those first 3 rings. What are you talking about? Like, this is nonsense. Like, but they do that, don't they? They talk like it's like a one entity. It's like, well, they're very clutch, and the way they win. It's like, what are you talking about, you moron? Maybe the coach is. The coach is pretty cracked, yeah.
Yeah, but you actually have to point out which things are the same and like say, okay, it is these factors that have caused them to do well versus NA. You can't just be like, Fnatic always wins versus North America and have that be an interesting point. It's a fucking boring point. It's the worst point. Like, what is Sam Matthews going to walk through that door and give them the secret strats to beating North America? Like, what the fuck is going on? It's just outrageous. So I hate these kind of narratives, and it's a bummer because there's so many other good narratives you could actually pick up on, which are true, right? Which are true.
I mean, the reason I don't get why they themselves shy away from the Chovy Knight angle as well is because, to me, that's the most obvious narrative in sports. You know this, Monty. It's the coronation of the future king. Like, you have the figure, like LeBron before he won, or whoever it might be, Patrick Mahomes or whatever. You pick the player. I guess Lamar Jackson would be their example in the NFL now. You pick the player who, like, individually, they've already shown you they could be the best. They've had the MVP season, but you're all waiting for them to finally get the green jacket of the Masters, as it were.
Ascend in the playoffs, right?
It's the most obvious fucking
Lamar
narrative
hasn't done yet.
No, but then why did they miss it here? Because what's stupid here is, what you need to understand is this, Monty. This is what they miss. They love it that Faker won last year because they're like you say, phew, our biggest narrative crutch kept winning so we can do it again. You morons. That's not how you use Faker. The way you use Faker, Monty, is how Dana White uses former champions. what you're using Faker for is to take the cachet of his name, and then
And
when
pass it
Chovy
on.
beats him, it gives Chovy that status, doesn't it? Now,
Yeah.
like Chovy's going up to, that's what you want to do with Faker's name. You want to build up the next star so that then they get to, so that, by the way, then when Faker is completely gone, there's still a story in this game. It's not like, oh, well, Faker doesn't play anymore. Like, that's going to be a whack narrative, boys.
Yeah, and like the same thing will happen in international competitions that happen to the LCS, which is that viewership will crash because you did such a fucking bad job of star
Sure.
building. So let's actually talk about, because we're not going to do that. We're going to talk about Chovy versus Knight, which is the premier matchup at this
Sure.
tournament. This is the matchup that we talked about coming in. It's the matchup that everybody should want. It's MVP versus MVP. It's the battle for best mid laner in the world. These guys have very different champion pools. They have very different styles, right? That's what's fascinating about this, is it's not a one-to-one comparison. Chovy is the porky Aurelion Sol Azir player. You know, Knight is the Ari god, right? I mean, Chovy's a very good Ari too, but I mean, they both have really like separate identities at this point in time. You know, Chovy's the guy in the side lane farming up. Knight's the guy in the skirmishes, team fighting. It's a very, very fun matchup. They're both, as you said earlier, Thorin, at the peak of their powers at the moment, effectively. And in a, you know, I think Chovy was the clear-cut MVP of LCK. Knight, there were other contenders, like Chovy was very good. I think it was less clear-cut there because, you know, Billy is less reliant on Knight to pop off. Whereas we've seen when Chovy makes one or two mistakes, it can cost GenG the game, because GenG, his supporting cast is surprisingly weaker because Canyon is kind of bad right now.
That's also the hype angle. Here's how you hype that matchup, guys. This isn't just like they both have unbeatable teams. Actually, the only one who I think has an unbeatable team is Knight. I think Knight, of these 2 years, BLG this year, has like somehow, I mean, look, he didn't look into it. It's because he's the best player and they all want to play with him. But he's gotten these crazy super teams that are like contenders for like best roster to ever play League of Legends. So the difference is Knight could be as good as Chovy and he's mega in his team. Chovy, though, has to do more to win the game, though. That's what's so cool. Like, there's even a world here, Monty, where BLG could beat GenG, but it could still prove that Chovy's the best player in the world. What if he like carries 3.5 for the games, but loses in 5 or something? Like, I could see that happening. This guy's, because I do think if you look at his team, the difference is Canyon's way more hit and miss. Obviously, we've complained about pace before. There are some holes on Chovy's team, but what makes up for it is Chovy. Like, Chovy now almost unbeatable, isn't he? And as you say as well, the most tantalizing thing is the one thing every Chovy hater said for years was like, yeah, but he's not that good in team fights. Well, you know what, mate? You want the mid laner who's the best in team fights? It's this guy. Knight's fucking cracked, mate. You put him on any of his classic champions, he has the most insane highlights you'll ever see. Like, just bonkers. So I think it's an amazing matchup to watch as well, because also like the team styles are different. I also, you know this, like it's the old saying, like styles make fights. You want a bit of contrast. That's what makes it so fascinating. You don't just want two identical teams rock'em sock'em roboting. You want like, I'm attacking you here and you're attacking here, then I'm countering with this, and you've got a game plan here. So I also think draft potential is crazy for this series.
Yeah,
where do you even attack?
I also think, to your point about Knight's rosters in the last couple of years, you know, unfortunately, this is also probably a bit of a downer for Rookie, because this is what Rookie's career should have been, right?
Sure.
Which is Rookie chose bad deals to make. And part of being an all-time professional player isn't just your own individual play. It's the career decisions you make about the contracts that you sign and where you're going, because that defines your legacy. And there were points in time where Rookie was the best mid laner in the world, most likely, but he basically was put on teams with very bad teammates where, even though he was individually shining much of the time, he would just get blasted when it mattered most, not go to international tournaments or fail at those international tournaments. And then now he doesn't have the legacy that Knight does, basically. So I think it's in many ways, I look at Knight and I think, shit, this is what we should have had with Rookie.
Thing is, the one thing I always stress, though, the other cool thing is, I made this point in my article I wrote about him, is the guy is actually Chinese. He's not some Korean import. Like, he could be the best player in the world, and he is a Chinese mid laner like that. You remember Monty? Like, we used to make fun of Chinese junglers. Chinese mid laners never came close. Like, maybe Cool had like half a minute where he looked good, you know, or like obviously Zhao Hu was an excellent player, like Mastermind. Like, he had the faker aspect of controlling the game, but he was never like, oh my god, you got to see his laning. It's just insane. Like, this guy's actually Chovy already looks like a bot fucking scripting when he lanes. Knight's one of the only players who can actually like match up to that. Again, you watch like a pro view of Knight night. It's unbelievable, mate. This guy's clicks are
Yeah,
unreal.
Xiaohu, the famous mid laners from China, like Xiaohu and Doanbi, were more like in-game strategic players rather than mind-blowing individual players, right?
John B is Korean, but I know what you mean.
Oh
He
yeah,
may as well
that's
be
true.
Chinese. He's second
He's basically
adopted
Chinese at this point in time.
He is basically, and he's never leaving it. Looks like, so don't worry about that. He's stay there forever. It's all good.
I don't even think he speaks Korean anymore.
To be fair, I always think he's Chinese as well because, like, you just think of his role in the team. Yeah.
He also never had unlike Rookie, he never had a career in Korea. So, I mean, Rookie's basically, Chinese at this point as well. Has meshed in very well, fluent in Chinese, et cetera, et cetera. So anyway, but like
and also it's an all Chinese team as well, Monty. No Koreans.
Yeah, which is huge, right? We've been kind of like, we've talked about this on the show before, but we've been iterating towards this roster, which was like first LPL champion of worlds, like carried by Koreans. Then we slowly got to like Koreans might be the worst players on the roster, but they're still there. And now we're just at no Koreans.
That's a big deal though. Yeah, of course.
So
like the idea you could have the actual best roster with no Korean players, like that is a new era of League of Legends, guys. That's why I don't get why everyone's hating on it. Like I'll never understand is this. Like in Counter-Strike, I want Zimu to like prove it to me and carry all the big finals. But I would like him to do it. I wouldn't like if I had a secret button that made him not carry Monty, I wouldn't just press it all the time like fuck that guy. I want people to be excellent. What's weird is Faker fans genuinely don't even seem to pray for Faker to win. They just pray for Chovy and Knight to lose, which is like, that is the most sour puss fucking angle you could ever take, guys. Like, what are you watching the game for if you don't like the best mid laners? Like it's not even like this is years ago. Maybe years ago, like there's a reason why Chovy was way more in the LS wheelhouse of like, he said he was the best like 4 years ago, but that's when he was just a bot, just doing insane farming and then like dying on the fucking team fight. The difference is he's not even that player anymore. Like if you watch this last LCK playoffs, what's not to like about Chovy? He's the complete package. He's a fucking mega stud. He's got everything you'd want.
Crushes every matchup, plays late game scaling, makes plays in the side lanes, plays the map super well, shot calls for his team, and then dominates team fights. And he does this while having a jungler in Canyon that frankly hasn't been that good and has been pretty exposed, I feel, at this MSI. I mean, Canyon's mistakes, overextensions, trying to make being in the wrong place at the wrong time on the map, when like trying to do invades or river plays when Chovy's not even in lane, like really dumb shit that Canyon's doing. I mean, even when we saw Canyon's Nidalee come out, he had a really rough early game in that top esports game, which is not great if you have a Nidalee. And it was the rest of the team that kind of bailed him out. Now, I will also say about GenG, Pays has been better than I thought this tournament, so that's been good. Like he feels like he's been less of a liability, but even then, you do wonder because GenG just has made a lot more mistakes. I attributed some of the mistakes in their first series versus Fnatic to some happy gaming just because it was kind of whatever. But the other side of the coin for GenG, and where they also are going to have advantages versus BLG, is they're just a better macro team. The charge that's leveled against BLG, which I will say did look better in games 3 and 4 versus T1, where I thought their macro was quite good. So that gives me hope. But if you look at GenG and the way they played game 1 versus top esports and how airtight their early game was, you see the evolution of GenG as a team, even from the Fnatic game, because it was in this Vayne top pick. So in the game against Fnatic, they play Vayne top. I have a lot of questions about how good Vayne top actually is without teleport, because you have to run Ghost Flash, otherwise you're fucking useless. If you don't get ahead, can you actually split push? If you can't split push, do you need teleport? Like if you can't win the side lane, do you need teleport, right? So there, if the Vayne doesn't get ahead, there are problems. Now, both of these games were lane swaps. Vayne obviously weak into lane swaps because if she tries to farm under turret, she just gets dove. So what Keen has been doing is been hovering the mid lane, right? And in game number 1, they had a problem versus Fnatic where Vayne was level 1 and they had to make a dive play, and Vayne didn't have level 2 to get condemn. So they ended up expending 3 flashes in order to successfully complete a dive, and it was super sloppy. This game, they actually get cream on the Akali, and then what they do is Keen and Chovy on Vayne and Corki lane together in the mid lane until Vayne hits 2, zone cream off the wave, so Chovy gets an advantage too because cream isn't even in XP range. Then when Vayne is 2 with Condemned, that's when they take it for the dive in the bot side. It's much cleaner, works much better. So you can see them kind of iterating on these plays and improving. And that's been a very good part of GenG. And also, you look at game one in the LCK finals, game one in the top esports series. When they start a series, they have some of the cleanest, like, first 20 minutes of any team ever in professional League of Legends. Not just now, but ever. Like, really good.
Oh, no, if you're a fan of Korean League of Legends, GenG should also be your favorite fucking teammate. What's not to love? They got everything, all the hallmarks of great Korean League.
Yeah. So, I mean, this team is very strong. And also they make, for the most part, really good, late game decisions. One of the concerning things about GenG, though, Thorin, is that their tight macro has been undercut by... So one of the problems that we've talked about with GenG at international events, previous iterations of this team, and I thought this was peanut, right, is that they get sucked into the other team's style. Like, you'll remember them, like, trying to, like, play Annie and then fight all the Drakes, which was just not how they play. Like,
last year, you mean, when they were doing the last MSI? Yeah.
Yeah. And it's like, GenG, why are you doing this? This isn't what you're good at. And, I thought this was more of a peanut issue, but I am becoming concerned that it's actually a Chovy issue, and Chovy might have been making these calls, or that, Chovy is such a voice in the team that he wants to play like the tournament meta or something like that. Because basically in these games that they played against top esports, they get sucked into all these stupid Drakes that they would normally never take in LCK. It's like, GenG, just give them the second Drake. It's not Soul. It's not even Soul Point. Just give it to them and make a play elsewhere. Why aren't you pushing lanes? Why aren't you splitting? This is how you play the game. It's how you've played the game for 2 years with Chovy, right? And so I do have a worry that they are, like, again, even though it's a different coaching staff, even though it's majority different players, I don't know why this is happening, but it feels like it's happening again. They're bending into, they're opting into what the other team wants to do. And I don't get that. I don't get it at all. But they are taking bad Drake fights, and that is concerning.
Look, here's the thing, though. They're still alive in the upper bracket. They got to the match. As long as they do awesome in this final, it gives a shit.
That's the difference, Thorin, is that now they actually are winning while doing this instead of losing.
Yep. No, that's even what I think, if you watch this tournament, is actually what I think's dispiriting about BLG and GenG. Is they haven't played their 10 out of 10 League of Legends, and teams have come close, but you still can't fucking beat these guys. Like, you just can't beat these guys in a best of 5. It's too hard. Like, that's also why this format's so justified. Like, and here's the thing, Monty. I'll tell you the angle people haven't thought of if they're stupid Faker fans. Is you do realize, because of the lower bracket, Faker has a chance to do a fucking epic comeback now and go all the way to the finals. Like, wouldn't that be super sick if he, like, rematched BLG or GenG from the LCK and beat them and they went to the final? He has a chance to do that. Look, I don't think it's going to happen, but that's also what I love about this format. You actually really get to see it. It's not just a one-off. Like, you get multiple chances to see it. So if Faker and T1 are who you think they are, maybe they run it back. Maybe they have an inspired low bracket.
And here's the thing. I'm all for seeing Faker come back into form and dominate and, win an MSI title through the lower bracket. Like, I don't hate Faker. I'm just realistic about his current performance. If his performance changes and he's going to have this epic run and give us better games, then fuck yeah, I strap me in for that one. You know what I mean? I just look at it right now and I'm just disappointed by what we're seeing. I'm just disappointed by his overall performance. I just don't think it lives up to the standard that he's played to this year. And one great Ari game isn't going to convince me that suddenly he's back on form, especially when his champion pool got mega pinched and he has a few days to turn it around and figure this shit out. So I hope he does, obviously. I want to see the on-form Faker versus Chovy and Knight matchups. I want to watch that.
Plus, it's also why I say earlier, you've got to just, like, pick your moments if you're a Faker fan. So it's like Monty says, he's not going to, like, in games 1 to 3 of a series, just blast the laning phase, get a load of solo kills, and then carry a team fight. Like, that's not Faker anymore. But if he gets to, like, a game, Monty, where it's like a 4th game, it's getting a bit nervy, the map state is sort of uncertain, then he might pull out, like, one mad clutch play that's fucking super epic. Because one thing I love is this. I always say, when you're the legendary great, but you're not at your peak anymore, it's like you can't do it on demand. You can't really just, like, run as fast as you want all the time. So what you got to do is you got to pick your moments. But if you're really wily, you'll get a moment where You'll have a chance to like hit a shot, to do a clutch play. And the difference is that aspect does scale Monty. Experience obviously can't be overcome by just being better at the game. So the one aspect Faker has is he's way more experienced than everyone he's playing. So if you put him in the right game, he can win you a game. He can do a super clutch play.
Yeah. And we've seen it, right? But I just think like this is one of those times where the level of competition at this event is so high, and the quality of the best of fives that we saw between Top Esports and GenG and BLG versus T1, all those teams were playing very well, by the way. And this is another thing that I hate about the fan narrative that has surrounded this event is like people are pretending that these are bad games. These are really good games.
Holy shit. Okay.
They're like, oh, this team is trash. I'm like, are you fucking kidding me? All of these teams have been really good.
Dude, I even thought some of the games PSG played in the end were pretty good, like way better than I expected. They actually had some games where they were contending. Yeah, it was legit.
G2 played some banger games. You know what I mean? Like we've seen some, you know, this is obviously as time goes on, the level of the game, the level of the game goes up as players get more experience and the game is more refined. So, you know, usually you will have with recency bias in League of Legends, you know, recency bias is real, not just because it was the last thing you remembered, but because players are just objectively better now than they were 3 years ago or 5 years ago or 10 years ago on average. But I mean, this is probably the highest level League of Legends tournament we've ever seen. Like all of the teams are performing. There hasn't been a notable big choke out of one of the like top 4 teams yet. That hasn't happened. So I think it has been, you know, even though some individual players may be underperforming, like we can talk about Cream, but Cream also had 2 really good games versus GenG where he mega carried and had outstanding performances. So yeah, the average level of Cream might be lower and he may be disappointing on some of those Ari picks, but he's overperformed on other picks.
Logically, Monty, Faker has to win the Dade Award because I've been told he's still the GOAT. He's the best player of last year on the PC, not even in League on PC. So logically, he must be the Dade Award winner now. What do you know? You lived long enough to see Faker become the Dade Award winner. Not really, because I never hyped him. But if you're idiots are doing that, then you should have to suffer the consequences. Luckily, I think nobody's going to win the Dade Award this time. I don't think anyone's joking. It was too hyped.
It's too late. Like these teams are already too far in the bracket, and nobody's really choked, right? So it's too late. I do find it just so wacky that fans like, why can't we just appreciate how Faker's greatness has changed into being an in-game leader? Why do we have to still pretend that he's the best individual player? Why? Why do we have to do that? Like, I don't see fans in other sports do this. You know, by the end of Peyton Manning's career, it was pretty evident he couldn't throw a football anymore, but he was still, his mind for the game was still winning games. He was still making the calls at the line where even if he threw a shit pass, that pass was still going to be a touchdown because he had out-schemed the defense and, you know, made the adjustments. I don't understand why we can't just say like.
Can I tell you what my anthropological read is, Monty? Because I've spent a lot of time, especially as someone who's not, let's say, neurotypical, even though I hate that fucking term. But I just think in a very literal sense, it's a good way to explain it, right? My brain obviously doesn't work the same way everyone else's brain works. What I would say from observing people is this, Monty. The reason why it's always nephews, it's always very young people. You notice this doesn't exist among experts. Have you ever noticed that, Monty? There isn't, like, we might make fun of some of the LCS or LEC analysts and like on the double lift angle of like, do you even watch LPL, bro? You know, like, but I'll tell you what, they don't tend to put their foot in their mouth when it comes to like the big name players, you know. You notice none of them are saying, I guess Faker's just better than Chovy because they know they'd get clapped by every other expert. So nobody ever does that. But all the young fans not only think that, Monty, they don't even think it like, look, I've got a bit of an edgy take. They think we're the morons for not acknowledging that Faker's the GOAT. Because here's what they do. Since they are someone who, by definition, has never accomplished anything in life, they've never been the best at anything. What they're doing is vicariously, when they watch Faker win, he's the self-insert of them. That's who they imagine they are. If I was on a team, I'd be the clutch one. I'd be the winner. You'd be, by the way, notice how this even sounds like something a little kid would say in the playground. You'd be the loser and the one who loses, but I'd be Michael Jordan and I'd hit the clutch shot and then I'd win and then you can't argue because I'm the best. Okay, it's like, sounds like a little kid who can't play well with others. And you're just like bossing everyone around. Because what I don't get is like I said there, it's why actually I'll give you a very interesting analogy that someone once made to me, but I think it's a banger analogy, right? You know how there's a bazillion people who are advocates for weed. They're like, no, it's good. In fact, maybe it heals you. Like they obviously they can go as far the other direction as you want, or they just think it's a harmless crime. You know, let people do it, decriminalize it. There's loads of people like that, Monty. It has been for decades and decades. Where's the massive party of like, heroin should be allowed for everyone? It's good. It's good for you. Doesn't exist. Even people who are heroin junkies, Monty, no, this ain't good for me. Like, I won't off this shit. Like, even I know this isn't the life for me. I wish I could escape it. So all I'm going to say is that, guys, you all say it's people like me and Monty and Dom and that we're just doing it for clicks. No, other way around, dickhead. It's like TSM. I said this a million years ago. You do realize the most popular content creator ever, Monty, is me in a time machine going back and just only saying good things about TSM. My channel would be like 10 times bigger, mate. I could have done a video why Bjergsen is the faker of the West in season 5. That'd probably have like 1 million fucking views. All the comments would be like, he is spitting facts. Well, except no one said that 10 years ago. But, like, Thorin is on point, reference game on point, or whatever. They've been doing that all the time. Finally, someone who sees through the bullshit of Monty and all those LS and all those Korean dick suckers. But the joke is, there isn't anyone, as far as I know, who's an expert who thinks Faker is the GOAT right now. Like, as in this moment, like, they think he is historically. But if anything, I think everyone's on the same train we are, mate. Everyone just watches him and just goes, it's cool, he can still play, sort of, innit? Like, it's actually the other way around. It's insane that he's still relevant. It's in fucking 2024. It's pretty good.
It tells you all you need to know, that we're all pleasantly surprised when he's like the second best mid laner in LCK, like he was this year. And it's like, well, that's great. We love that. You know what I mean? Like we love the fact that he's capable of being the second best mid laner, because remember last summer, he literally had to go on break because he was injured and he could play 2 champions. So his bounce back has been fucking amazing, guys. But it's also that his level has been inconsistent and has dipped at this MSI. So I think it's interesting to talk about Faker, but I just wish we could celebrate his greatness in the way it deserves to be celebrated, not in some whack-ass lie way.
By the way, don't ever let any moron also tell you that GOAT is just about your career. GOAT is the idea that if we were to take that player, that's the best player to ever play. That's not even just about resume. That's a separate conversation. Like, GOAT is the idea of, like, if we took all the nameplates off and I just showed you a bunch of footage, who's the best that you seen on the screen? The person you pick is the GOAT. As far as I'm concerned, it is. Because I always say this, if you're not using your eyes to tell you, what the fuck are you using then? That's the only thing you've got to perceive how good people are at the game. Like, remember, because the problem is it's not a 1v1 game. If this was a 1v1 game like StarCraft, we'd know the best is they'd won every tournament. In a team game, you're always weighing up, like I think the most underrated part about people like Faker, by the way, is you have to look at things like who was your coach, who was your GM. You said it earlier about Rookie. Half of Rookie's career isn't even anything Rookie did with the mouse. It's just like he signed on the dotted line and then an idiot just fucking put the wrong player in top lane or something like that, like that. Shit like that's like, how much control do you even have over that? That's why actually, this is one people won't like, but it's true. Faker's also had an incredibly lucky career, mate. Look how many times like they've doubled down on him. By the way, and there's even a world, in my opinion, Monty, where if his name hadn't gotten so crazy, I think actually T1 were fools to not sell him, mate. Like, if it wasn't for the fact he's like the greatest like market employee ever, if you think about it, if that's true, they were being offered 20 million like 2 years ago, bro, that you should snap call that. What are you talking about? Like, that's like the value you would get off that would be meant. You could run the T1 org for the next 20 years off that money. You wouldn't even, and you'd actually potentially get a better score. The joke is you could just literally, you realize, guys, for 20 million, you could have just sold Faker for 20 million. We don't even know if their team becomes good in the LPL. You buy Chovy for like 5 million. You've now upgraded from Faker to Chovy plus 15 million to just spend on the rest of the squad. What are we talking about? Like, that's like a snap call right there. I think they only didn't because they wanted the history and the team fans would go mental, right? So if you talk about business, actually would have been a bag of deal.
Well, it's also that I think you do have to appreciate that SK Telecom as an organization has always, back to the Brood War days, cared about, they've actually been the reason why they are as famous as they are and probably the most prestigious esports organization in the world is because they maintain their star players. I mean, even after Boxer retired, they were bringing him back as like a GM and on the staff of the team and as the face of the team, right? And they have done an amazing job of maintaining continuity of players with their fans, even post-retirement. And I'm sure they're going to do that with Faker as well. The other thing that helps them a lot is that ever since Comcast came in and basically created the joint venture with SK Telecom to create the modern iteration of T1, is that you have 2 multi-billion-dollar companies that are running this roster, in which case the money is less important to them than it being a toy for them to enjoy, right? It is a rounding error on their balance sheets to pay Faker. And like selling, they don't have to sell Faker because they don't give a shit. It's a marketing exercise. I mean, Comcast is just there because it's fun. It's fun for their management to run this organization. And SK Telecom is there because it's a great marketing exercise for them in Korea. excellent for them, right? There are a lot of actual, competing telecom companies. There's, LG has a wireless network. KT has a wireless network. There are other big companies that have wireless networks in Korea. And so
By the
this gets
way,
people onto SK Telecom.
I'll tell you the piece of content they haven't made, and they have absolutely dropped the ball on this in LCK. Do you know what content piece I would have made, Monty? After Faker wins this last Worlds, and he's won the record 4th Worlds, already broke his own record, guys, to win like an almost impossible number of Worlds since no rival has even 2, right? What you do is, this is the content piece you do. It's not, is Faker the best now? You have a content piece where it's talking heads, and it is Boxer and Flash and Nada and fucking Mata and all the legendary greatest Koreans in every game, and you just have them talk about what they think about Faker. It could be whatever angle they might admire, like when he was coming up as a rookie, or what he's done in a team game. That would be a fucking fire concept piece. I wouldn't want to watch that. Look, they can have whatever opinion they want. Maybe they disagree. Maybe the StarCraft 1 stick League of Legends is not as good, but I'd be interested to see what they'd say. That'd be fucking really spicy.
Yeah. Yeah, that'd be great. Especially because you have so many of those old T1 players that you could easily probably wrangle back. And also, it just creates nostalgia moments for people who have followed T1 for many years. Even if you weren't around for Boxer's run in Brood War, you still about Boxer, guys, and you still want to know what he'd have to say about Faker. I guarantee you that, right? So even the Korean fans who may not have watched during that era, because that goes back to the early 2000s. But yeah, I mean, look, there's a lot of stuff here, but I think it's pretty clear, like with the resources that they have, T1 has made the right call. They are in a unique scenario where they don't actually care about making money, right? And that's the story that's never told, guys. That's the story that's never told about T1, is that people are like, if anything, I'm going to put this out there. If anything, T1 relative to the amount of resources that they have has underperformed.
Oh, they have.
Which, they've won 1 title and 1 domestic title and 1 world championship with this roster. And it has been an absolute fumble, because especially in esports winter, they have way more money to play with. This team is run by the son of the Comcast CEO. He has all the resources in the universe. You know what I mean?
That's why I think I look at this team differently than other people, mate. Like, I actually think the Faker fans who love that this lineup got run back, it's like, you must just be a masochist, mate. Like, you're not going to win. Like, when I looked at this lineup and they said they were going to re-sign it, my first thought was, like, just sign Viper. He joined tomorrow. Imagine if Viper was playing with this Faker, guys. All of a sudden, none of these problems we're talking about exist. Like, Faker could just play like his fucking weird lane pick just to play around Viper, and he could just pilot that guy around the fucking server and win every team fight. Like, wouldn't that be fucking sick? But instead, they stuck with this 5-man lineup, so they have to take the strengths and the flaws of it, unfortunately.
Yeah, and they got lucky to win Worlds. They got lucky. I don't think that this has been some sort of fucking amazing coup by Joe Marsh as a GM, because as a GM, you need to win more titles than this with the amount of resources that you have. You can't keep getting bopped by GenG that is struggling through esports winter, right? You literally have the financial backing of Comcast and SK Telecom, and this is what you give us.
I will say, though, look, I love to hit on Joe Marsh too, but I will say he did win Worlds, so I'll give him that one. Listen, you only won 1 Worlds, though, Joe. Where's the second? He did win Worlds. I'll give him that one. He did win.
But if any team should win Worlds, and Joe Marsh, Joe Marsh he doesn't even come from esports. He comes from Comcast Spectacor. He comes from the Philadelphia Flyers, guys. He comes from a fucking hockey team that's owned by Comcast, and was put in this position. And like, he did win Worlds eventually, Thorin. But what would the story be if JDG won Worlds last year? I mean, like, I'm just saying, relative to the amount of resources they have that have been poured in by an American multi-billion-dollar company and a Korean multi-billion-dollar company, their results are unimpressive. This team should be hands down the best team in the world. Period. They have more resources than the Chinese teams. Like, JDG's roster was in the $16 million roster last year, and I'm sure they outspent T1, but T1 could spend more if they wanted to. And they have so many advantages. They have the fan base advantage. They have the Faker advantage. They have the money advantage. it is underwhelming relative to the amount of spend, especially considering they keep getting clapped by GenG domestically when GenG probably has a budget that's like 25% of theirs.
That's why I say the part people haven't done. One thing I always do, you know, with the storylines, I just project them forwards and backwards and look at all angles of it. So, like, when I look at this tournament right now, as of right now, T1 isn't going back to the final winning this tournament. Like, they're going to lose third or fourth, probably. That's where they're going to be finished in the tournament. And so there's a world where you did have the reigning world champions, but they've lost this MSI. They lost last year's MSI. They won Worlds. They lost Worlds before that. They lost MSI before. Like, eventually it's going to start to look bad. Like, think how many times every single time. This is the other thing about T1 as well. Everyone has to acknowledge Monty. Because they have a clutch factor, you never ever hear anyone when they go international go, they're probably like the fifth best team. They always get that free third status. Have you noticed that? Whoever's number one, like it could be like JDG from LPL, GenG with Chovy winning, but everyone always puts T1 third. Have you noticed that? They always get to be third most likely to win the tournament, and they've done it once out of like 5 times now or something. So like, I agree, you got to have more than that. Like, if you're as good as people think you are, you'd show it. Because right now, it looks, quite frankly, this is why I was never worried. Like, thanks. You know what? I actually have to say thank you to Joe Marsh for re-signing that roster. Because if you hadn't, everyone would just blame whoever they'd signed now. If they hadn't won Monty, they'd go, oh, shit, if you'd have kept Guma, he would have won. So now, because you ran it back, you're going to see that the fluke was the Worlds run. That was it. That was the outlier. The rest is normal reality. This is what this team's like. Like, they can be sketchy, for sure.
Yeah, and historically they haven't, as you point out, they haven't had any clutch factor, right? Even in even when you think that they've overcome it, like at the end of last World, then we get to the LCK finals where Zeus just gets Omega clapped in lane by Keen and basically solo loses the game, where Faker's like riding the fucking Rift Herald in and getting killed. Like, it was a pretty shameful end to that series. I mean, it was maybe the greatest LCK finals of all time. So we're not going to go too hard here. I think T1 played well, and they certainly played above what we would have thought, right? We thought that was going to be a much more one-sided affair for GenG. So T1 did do better legitimately as an underdog, but that clutch factor hasn't been there. But that's okay, Thorin. You know why? Because we have Factor as a sponsor here at LFN. We've got the clutch factor, which of course is your meal delivery kits. So they send you fresh, never frozen meals, dietitian approved and ready to eat in just 2 minutes, already made for you. 35 different meals and more than 60 add-ons to choose from every week. So Factor is great, guys. I've been enjoying it while I've been back here in the States. They have such a great variety of options, Calorie Smart, Protein Plus, keto options as well. So if you like low carbohydrates, that's been great. And it's better for you than, of course, ordering takeout under most circumstances, because it's really about the choices you make. And, I don't make the healthiest choices when I order takeout, guys. Let's just put it that way. You probably don't either, I'm guessing. So to have it already at home and ready for you is awesome. Especially if you want to eat it late at night, if you're staying up or you don't have a lot of time at lunch, or you're bringing lunch to work with you instead of eating out. You'll also spend less money this way, which is great. So you can head to factormeals.com/LFN50 and use code LFN50 to get 50% off your first box plus 20% off your next month. That's code LFN50 at factormeals.com/LFN50 to get 50% off your first box plus 20% off your next month while your subscription is active. So thank you very much to Factor. Been great. So, especially if you're in the States, finally had a chance to try it myself. Really enjoyed it. So thank you very much. All right. So moving on to the rest of MSI. Do you have a prediction for first place team, Thorin?
I mean, I just feel like BLG was the one I've been riding with the whole time, because it's that factor I said before. I just feel like the problem is I do think Chovy has to do a lot. Like, he basically has to be the best player in the fucking server. So I think that is a lot of weight to put on anyone's shoulders. The difference is I think BLG is just so cracked out from 1 to 5. I think they will just on aggregate manage to win this tournament. That's why I'm hoping this upper bracket's a bagger.
I have to agree, especially with the games that we've seen. Like, the stuff with Canyon and the bot lane of GenG still kind of worries me. And BLG, in some ways, like, Canyon's been underperforming my expectations, but BLG has actually been overperforming my expectations based on their macro, which is really good for them. And I love the way they kind of analyzed and dismantled T1. And also, as we've discussed, the matchup for BLG into GenG's bot lane was kind of preferable, the style matchup. when we started this tournament. And so for me, I think BLG probably has a slight edge moving forward, but there's enough time. That's the other thing is like this tournament is highly condensed compared to Worlds, which is like really boring because there's too much time in between matches. But we're not seeing this match until Thursday. So, they've got almost a week basically to prep for this one match. So, I think that a lot could change within that time period. There's going to be multiple days of scrims to kind of work out the kinks. So it'll be fascinating to see which of these teams like shows up on Thursday. Because there's a lot less time to prep for the finals than there is for this winter bracket finals. Like this is a long prep time for this for this short of a tournament.
I also just think on BLG, the bin factor is so OP as well. Like you have a guy just sat in your back pocket who can just come out and in one game clap anyone. That's so fucking OP, mate. They don't even have to play through this guy to win the game, but if he gets the right draft angle, he'll just clap everyone. That's pretty sick.
I mean, I would argue the same thing with Keen, right? Like Keen has historically choked, which could come back, but at least he has been much more clutch recently, and they've started to play for him more into the top side as well. So, the Rise pick, people might be down on that Rise pick, but that was a really winnable game for GenG if they didn't take some really stupid Drake fights. Like if you play that game out and you play like, because remember, I didn't like the fact one of the problems with Rumble in this meta is that you kind of have to take TP because you want to take Ignite, but then there are lane swaps, right? So he takes Ignite in this game because he knows Keen wants the 1v1. But if you actually play side lanes into the late game and Chovy will play Corki in the side lane just fine, and you have the Rise, you can actually just completely win this. And, GenG kind of did a brilliant thing in this game versus top, which is that they baited out the Rumble pick. So they show the Jarvan, which then threatens Jarvan Rumble combo. And also Rumble is a great flex pick for GenG. Keen is an amazing Rumble player, so is 369. So they bait out the Rumble pick because they don't want them to have Jarvan Rumble into Varus, which is like Varus just dies, basically. And so they pick the Rumble. And then, like I said earlier, Keen plays the Rise matchup into Rise. It's a very good matchup for Rise because as soon as Rumble tries to all in you, you just rune prison him. And if he tries to pursue you, you have phase rush. So you just run the fuck away from him. Then you have late game Rise ults and you have TP. He becomes a monster. It's just that GenG played the composition out wrong because they were too horny to go for Drakes in the early game rather than just playing out their cross map advantages by having TP. So I was disappointed in that, but I didn't think Keen was set up for success there and did very well on an individual level. It's just that the macro, the calling of the team fell apart. And that's really what I'm worried about. But Keen can absolutely be a monster as well. And Keen's champion pool is huge.
It's why actually the one shame for me is just the cream factor of top esports. I feel like if he had shown up and been like popping at this tournament, it would have added a little bit extra spice to the match. Whereas the difference is I do sort of expect top esports to lose to all the big names.
The thing about this MSI, though, is that I feel like we've had more good over performances than under performances. Like Cream has been disappointing, but also, like I said, the Cream Ari is kind of balanced out that nobody expected him to be good on Corki, and he had a pop-off Corki game, so that was a big plus. But honestly, like, if Cream has been below the level we would have expected, and Top Esports hasn't been there, well, G2's been above it. Team Liquid's been above the level we expected. So, like, it feels like the pleasant surprises have outweighed the bad ones, which have led to a better tournament overall. PSG was also better than we expected. So I think, like, on balance, like this has been a tournament that has overperformed my thoughts coming into it so far relative, compared to the parts that underperformed. Like Fnatic still made it relatively far. Like I guess FlyQuest was the only thing that was disappointing about FlyQuest was that they didn't get out of brackets, but PSG just was better. And we got a 5-game series between PSG and BLG, which would have never happened with FlyQuest. So in essence, it was a better result for the entertainment factor of this tournament. And play-ins are kind of whatever. Like even if FlyQuest gets out, they just lose twice and immediately leave probably. So I don't know. I feel like, yeah, it sucks that Cream isn't quite there and maybe Top isn't quite where they should be. But also, we haven't seen any kind of like Tien ins. In fact, Tien has been amazing on this team. He completely out jungled Canyon in that GenG series. Like he's been really good. So other players that have shown inconsistency in the past have not shown that inconsistency yet. Although there is time, because the TN int, if it comes versus G2, will be very like hilarious, I think.
Well, here's the part people obviously haven't thought about. What about the Bane angle? What if their punishment must be more severe? What if T1 gets eliminated by top esports?
Yeah. And then the LPL killer narrative goes away. I noticed that nobody was talking about how the end of the LPL killer run when they lost to BLG. Weird, right? Weird.
It's almost like convenient that they just deleted that narrative completely. Yeah. Didn't it? What a world. Also, someone even said on Twitter it's the first time like a Chinese team in China had beaten in a best of 5 like a Korean team like that. So that actually was a historic match. This is why, by the way, if you're someone who works talent in League of Legends, can I just explain to you very briefly why everyone laughs at you and thinks you're a joke and that you're the equivalent of like, we're doing real theatre and you're doing vaudeville. Like, you're not a serious fucking actor in this game. Because you actually do sit in a fucking production meeting and run through potential storylines. And when they don't manifest at all, you don't go, guess I'll just freestyle it. You go, let's just crowbar them in anyway. And you just never fucking adapt. Because what's whack is this. I don't know if people understand this. Like, I can't say in the modern day what they do. I haven't done events in years in Counter-Strike. But I've never attended some sort of a rehearsal where I ever told anyone any of my points, ever. In fact, I personally, eventually, because there was so much backbiting in the game, I didn't even used to tell people my points before I went out for the segment. I just understood I had the best host in the world. They're going to roll with it. I'm always going to be good impromptu. So we'll just let it go live. Like, you can see that is so missed in League of Legends, mate. It's one of the reasons why I always made this point that I actually personally was really glad when Cadril stopped doing LEC. I actually thought LEC made him worse because it drew him into their bullshit world where you have like the 3 narratives you're allowed to talk about. And in the game, you have to like that joke I said last week about Dracos, like the joke is, this is Dracos casting the most insane night highlight of all time. Oh my God, Ruler, he's onto Ruler. Ruler's at the back. Ruler doing damage. It's like, meanwhile, it's like a Syndra doing everything on the screen. And you're like, bro, can he get a break? Are you being paid by Ruler per word or something? 1 cent per word. What is this? So like, I always feel like, guys, just fucking loosen it up a little bit. Like, you can switch up narratives midstream. That's actually a strength of a broadcast in esports. We're not sports. You don't have some enormous package someone worked on for 17 hours with all you can just you can flex it up and change to what the current narrative is. Because I'll tell you another thing, Monty. Shall I tell you the reason why? I'll answer your earlier question. I think people are saying these games suck. It's because, one, I'll tell you what I'm sick and tired of with the Western broadcast. Stop fucking acting like you're actually a fan of the Western team on the broadcast, you moron. You're there. That's not the Western broadcast. It is the English language broadcast. You're supposed to be as big a fan of fucking BLG as anyone who likes League of Legends. You're supposed to be the best commentator / analyst in the world. You're acting like this is the fucking PCS stream. And you're like, oh, it sucks that Faye could fucking beat our team. It's like, that's not the fucking angle. Because the other thing is as well, if you listen to the way they analysed the Western losses, Monty, it was all just being mega down on all the players. I made this joke where I said, like, if fucking Emily and Jack are going to explain how disappointed they are in FlyQuest, well, you know what? I should do a fucking stream where I bring Jensen and Spider on. We analyse your fucking analysis, dickhead. So some of your analysis is shoddy as fuck. But you to go, but I'm on the finals. Yeah, because like we can't get you off it, motherfucker. Like you just locked on it for some reason.
It's also that, you know, they hired 0 LPL casters for this entire event. And, you know, we might after in a few days have an LPL team guaranteed into the grand final, right? And like, I understand that some people like the Western casters better, and certainly the Western casters are much more exposed to the English language audience than LPL casters are, because the LPL English stream is still it's still the smallest out of all of the major regions. And this is all true. But the problem is like, you need that expertise, at least on the desk, guys. Like typically they've had at least an LPL expert on the desk. And people will say, well, what about Dagda? I'm like, Dagda hasn't worked LPL recently.
Oh, come on.
Yeah, I think Dagda's great, but Dagda hasn't worked LPL recently. Like, it really does matter. I am telling you guys this from my own experience of working in this situation. It matters that you have the right people to tell the right narratives. And oftentimes, because those people are much more excited about players like Knight than other players or than other casters, right? And they're much more able to say, okay, well, in this situation, when he was playing fucking anyone's legend, this is what he did. And those other casters didn't watch that game. Like I didn't watch that game, right? You know, when I'm curating bangers only, I'm not picking up BLG just fucking shit stomping Ultra Prime. That's not a match I'm watching, but it is a match that LPL casters watch. And there may be some very valuable seeds in there. And I will tell you from experience of me casting every single game in Korea for years that when I was at Worlds, I would hear casters say whack ass shit because they didn't watch the less important matches. So they didn't see or know about certain aspects of player styles or champion pools that were actually very relevant to the action that was unfolding at the highest level on screen. And they would just say like, oh, this player really doesn't play this. And I'd be like, they absolutely do. They do. You didn't watch it. And so they feed you bad info. And like, even if you formerly did a region, it doesn't mean that you're presently an expert in that region. And you need these people to be on broadcast. Like, I think this is another reason, why people like Dom and Cadril, who are watching all of these matches and who are describing them, end up being far superior when it comes to knowledge of the teams and players, is because we actually know they're watching it. And it's also different to have somebody who is doing verbal commentary for recall and memory, because they are having to explain to their audience, like a caster, what this player does, why this player is successful on these champions, and that ingrains it more in the memory. It is different, I am telling you guys, as somebody who grinds a huge amount of film. The games that I VOD review on my stream, I remember better than the games that I watch by myself, because it's a more passive experience rather than an active learning experience where I'm forced to vocalize this to an audience. You remember better. You do. So even if you are watching these other regions, it may just get washed out in your memory, because you watch
Here's
so
the
much.
irony, Monty. That's why, though, the fan will never understand why no one gives a shit about his opinion. Because you never studied any of these games. You just watched them. Like Monty just said there. In the same way as I'm sure Dagda gets up on a fucking day that's not LEC, and if he gets up early enough in the morning, he's had his coffee, I'll bet if there's a game on, I'll bet if fucking NIP's playing FPX, he tunes in and watches a couple of the games. He watches them on a second monitor, and he probably fucking does his emails or something,
Yeah, of course.
team fight, watch it, because that's totally logical. It's not his full-time job to cast the fucking LPL. So not only is he studying it in a different way, but again, you, the fan watching, you're fucking DMing someone while the game's going on, then you're telling Monty, when do you know about it? Like, he was studying the game. He actually had to write down all notes. And then lastly, it's one of the reasons why everyone thinks I have such terrible takes in League of Legends. Because I have this superpower, Monty. I don't know why I'm the only one who's got it. Because for people like Ellis and Dom, they seem to be tortured by this forever. I actually, as soon as I know someone literally doesn't know on the most factual level what they're talking about, I don't care anymore what they think. For real. So when people tell me like, you are wrong, Rookie is not the best player. You didn't watch 95% of his career, so why would I give a shit what you think? It's like when all the kids now who are LeBron fans tell me why Michael Jordan wasn't the best, but I know they never watched him play, so I don't care, mate. Tell me anything, make anything you want. You can't go left, or his team's easy. You don't know any of those. You didn't watch the matches, mate. You didn't watch the matches.
Yeah,
so
you're regurgitating narratives.
I'm with you, Monty. If you want to judge like someone's GOAT case, you have to get in the weeds and watch like them against Kwangdong Freaks and fucking Sandbox. You have to watch all the games, because that's what's really going to tell you like what was the guy's body of work like in all the regions.
And here's the thing, guys. I will tell you the reason why Cadril was the best caster in the last couple of years before he went full-time co-streaming. The reason is because he was co-streaming while he was casting. We could see that he did all of these other regions. He would literally wake up and do Asian regions and then go into work and cast LEC in the afternoon. And so we know that he was actually going through the motions of basically casting every region. Now, he's got a lot of stuff on top of that. He's smart, former pro player, funny, charismatic. He's got a lot going for him, but so do the other casters. The reason why Cadril was so good was because he fucking grinded. And he worked harder than everybody else. You know what I mean? And like, here's a question for the other casters. Why aren't you out there with co-streaming? Why don't you do that? Huh?
I even have a question like that, Monty, because I know that I'll give you another translation of plebs. When they go, yeah, but I mean, Dagda used to do LPL. What they're saying there, Monty, is not that I actually, in good faith, think Dagda is as informed about LPL as every single LPL caster and analyst. What they're saying there is, I just like Dagda.
I mean,
so no matter what you say, Monty, I'm just going to go put Dagda in there. Even though, here's the obvious thing I would say. If you want Dagda in there, I'll make you a deal. He can come to the event as long as he does a 1 month boot camp before this way, watches all the games. If he does that and studies all the games, Deal. I'll do that deal with you. He didn't do that, though. I'm speculating here, but I'm going to guess he didn't do that because logistically, if you don't know there's too many LPL games, there's no way he could have done that. He'd be dead.
Yeah, you do. As a caster, you do watch film. You obviously grind hard before an international event, but you're not watching every game of every region, right? Like, especially because if you're casting play-ins, you have to go like watch playoff runs of the Brazilian team, right, or whatever, right? So you do different kinds of prep, right? But cramming at the last minute doesn't excuse 4 months of work that you could have been doing up until that point in time. And look, I think Dagda's great right now. He's one of my favorite casters. I'm really glad he's here. He does have a lot of knowledge from his time previously in LPL. I think his game knowledge is very good right now. But we're using him as an example because the fans are holding him up as like an example of somebody who should be an LPL expert, and he has historical knowledge, but I'm just saying he doesn't have comprehensive, up-to-date knowledge compared to current LPL casters. And I think it does matter when you have these international events to have current, updated experts within these situations. So I just find Riot's decision-making to be super disappointing about this because I just don't think it's worth I don't think it's worth the trade-off. Like, I don't want just 2 LCK casters and then everybody else being from LEC and LCS. I think that's fucking outrageous. I don't even understand fundamentally a system where when you are rewarded with the path to international competition as a caster goes like this, which is completely bonkers when you think about it. It is, do you want to be in the, like, think about this from a player perspective. If you were a player and you're like, my goal is to make the world finals of League of Legends, would you go to NA? Would you go to NA?
I mean, it's the most like viable route to get there. Yeah.
No, not to the world final, like the actual finals, the finals, like the last match of the year,
right? Okay.
The world's grand finals. Would you go to NA? Because that's what you have to do to get there as a caster.
Sure.
It's absurd. Like, literally, you do fewer games. Remember, LCS now is 8 teams and you're broadcasting like 2 days a week. Compare that to LCK or LPL. LPL 7 days a week, some days with 3 best of 3s. And LCK is 5 days a week. You have 10 best of 3s. And so basically what Riot is saying is that if you want to be on the World Finals broadcast, your path to get there is cast the lowest level play, cast less, and that's what gets you there. So if you cast better games that are harder to analyze and you cast 3 times the number of games in a year, you don't get to be even at this tournament now, even there at all. It's fucking bonkers.
I also think some of the talent over the years they have overlooked is criminal. Like the one that is the biggest, he's the most glaring one that you missed, right? You fucking cretins. You have no eye for talent, was that guy Lyric. That guy was fucking mega, mate. He had an amazing voice for it even. He was really great in team fight. Almost every Great the Shy clip, I think it was just this guy fucking commentating it. Right now, Nymera's probably peaking. Again, he can't get a fucking look in. Right, he can't get a look in on a broadcast, apparently. Just fucking bollocks in it, mate. Just pantomime.
I mean, Nymera also is co-streaming the LPL games that he's not casting. So he's actually casting all of the LPL games, basically.
This is why I always bring up that concept, Monty, incentives. Like Riot Games does not incentivize you to be the best in the world at your job. That's actually so low on the priority list of things you have to do. Like the joke about casting in League of Legends is this, Monty. It's more important what you don't say than what you do say, which is exactly the opposite of what casting should be, isn't it?
And also to your point, like they do spend a lot of time in these story meetings. And the reason why, I actually think it's probably a good thing that a lot of these like writer layoffs happened at LCS and LEC, because in my experience of working not only on Riot broadcasts, but other broadcasts, the more producers they cram in there, the more these people justify their existence within the broadcast and justify their jobs. Basically what they do, and I've had this problem a lot, is that you get producers or writers and their job is to schedule meetings with you, the casters, and then try and download your brain instead of doing work. And then they write something that is basically what you would have said anyway, except they complicate your life for no reason. They waste your time, and then they waste money by existing within the broadcast. Like I was going to make these points anyway. I don't need you to put them in bullets for me.
I also think, mate,
I did the work of grinding and thinking about the game, and you're just basically there to siphon it out of me and put it in bullets to justify your existence. But I have spent thousands of broadcast hours as an extemporaneous speaker, and I could do it myself. Thank you.
They also have the most hackneyed angles of all time. Like, Monty, I actually thought, for real, am I in some nightmare fucking purgatory dimension now? When they, on the broadcast, actually had the gall at MSI to do the fucking meme again of like, I remember that time Shocks did a monologue for Fnatic. Right. That monologue was at Worlds in 2020, and you're talking about it like some fucking Al Bundy, like 5 touchdowns at poor Dunkai. What are you talking? Why are you referencing that for? What that little, you know, when everyone makes fun of you, Monty, and they go, ha, he's just living off that train, Russell. No, that's all you remember. It's how I know none of you are these sick fucking macro god draft experts, because you don't remember a single fucking detail about the game of League of Legends. You just remember shit like Monty did a train whistle, Doublelift used to be on CLG with a trophy list. Shocks went, it starts with success. And then that's still being hammered 4 years later at a totally different fucking international tournament. And we're really implying, here's why that was never even funny in the first place. Because the actual implication, Monty, is that Fnatic was going to win that series, but Shocks voodoo cursed them by saying it starts with success. And then the universe made them lose the game.
Well, also, you'll notice that I haven't ever rehashed the train whistle thing, right? I did it one time at my first Worlds in 2013, and then I never did it again, ever.
I mean, the joke is, at this point in time, if I was actually evil, I'd just tell Medic, mate, just pull one out yourself, just do it. You'll get all the people will think you did it first. You'll get all the crack. He'll be, remember that time, that guy with the whistle? What, Monty? No, Medic, I think he is. Begins with M. Yeah, Medic, yeah. Should just do that. He should just pull out the train whistle and go, doot, doot, all aboard. Fair, this is the best League of Legends in the world, and it comes from the Europe low bracket. Doot, doot. Just do that. Do that. Make all the memes come together.
Jat's usually the one who steals my bits, not okay. Medic, to be fair. All right, guys. We do actually also have a new sponsor this week on Summoning Insight, which is exciting for us, especially if you would like to learn a new language. It is Babbel, which is a web-based language learning software and app for you guys. It's based off of real conversations, which I find to be very interesting. You can learn, I think for native English speakers, they have 13 other languages, 14 if you count like Latin American Spanish and, you know, European Spanish as kind of 2 different dialects. But lots of options there. It's not really gamified. So if you want something a little bit more intense, like I've been enjoying doing this. It also, if you already have basics down, like I basically took a quiz and it set me to intermediate French. But the way that it teaches is very interesting. So you take these basically lessons where they work on you with various phrases, and then not only do they have a speaking element, so you actually use your phone's microphone, and it actually does algorithmic speech recognition to try and help you with your pronunciation, but they have native speakers kind of in these conversations with you, as well as like sample text message conversations. One what I was doing was like about a weekend trip with somebody where they integrate the phrases that they're trying to tell you and have you type them out yourself. So I found it like actually quite helpful in terms of committing certain things to memory, and it's pretty quick. So it's been fun. So if you guys have been wanting to learn another language, it's a great time. So here's a special limited time deal for our listeners. Right now, get up to 60% off your Babbel subscription, but only for our listeners at babbel.com/summoning. Get up to 60% off at babbel.com/summoning, spelled BABBEL.com/summoning. Rules and restrictions may apply for you guys. But if you guys are wanting to learn another language, other apps, you know, they gamify it a bit more, but I think it's, for me at least, it's been not as effective as this one at like having that stickiness. And it's something you can both do via web browser as well as like on the Babbel app on your phone. So really nice, always done by like, you know, in that conversation style by native speakers. Pretty thorough as well. So it's been fun. So thank you very much, Babbel, new sponsor.
What I think is good about apps like that is it's basically the fact that, like, one, you can just do one lesson a day if you want. You can just keep like your speak going or whatever, and just keep in that scenario. Look, you're obviously not going to be fluent, are you? You're speaking 5 minutes of the language a day. But I'll tell you what, you will be shocked, even just doing that amount, how much over time, like Monty says, will stick in your brain. Like, for example, I'll give you a little pro tip I found from using these stuff is I actually try not to do what I used to do at school, which is at school I tried to consciously, cognitively understand what I'm saying and think. So I was trying to figure out what the verb. Instead, what I do now is, because I just do this every day, I just go off what my instinct tells me the answer is, and I find that is way more reliable. And you, over time, you'll notice that level go up and up and up and up. And eventually, you might not know that. Just like in your own native language, you might not know the reason why you pick this particular thing, but your brain just tells you that makes sense because you've been drilled enough. Because essentially, they just drill every variation of things, but they don't do it in a row like school where it's really boring, like you go through the whole verb. It's more like through the lessons, through weeks and weeks and weeks. Eventually they hit you with every past version, present version, him, her, them, us. Like, so I actually think these are mad underrated, these apps, mate. I think they are. Because like I say, you can put in as little time as you want, or put in as much. Like if you're actually going to go there, just do 10 lessons a day before you go for 2 weeks. You'll like sort of start cooking a little bit. You'll be close to the level you want to be.
Yeah,
at.
it's also just very practical, which is what I like about this one. So yeah, it's good. It's good stuff. So thank you very much, Babbel. We are excited to have them as a new sponsor here on Last Free Nation. So babbel.com/summoning, 60% off your subscription. So good stuff. It really is amazing. Plus, like if you're APA, now's the time to get your Babbel subscription so you can actually talk shit to everybody in the server. Very valuable. It teaches you how to do those little text message like conversations. So APA can use this. It's the way he tilts his opponent. I actually love that about him. I mean, it's like the fucking professional performance paradox where it's like simultaneously you want Western teams to not do weird shit, but also they have to do weird shit. Otherwise they just copy the Asian teams. The NA trash talking paradox is like, well, we miss all the personalities we used to have at LCS. They were really the drivers of this, but also APA, shut the fuck up. Like just pick one. I actually enjoy that he's doing this stuff. I find it funny. I don't think he's very good at trash talking. He's not up there with the greatest trash talkers in esports of all time. Certainly not in an FPS player level, and especially not on the level that you guys hear. All I'll say, guys, is if you have been in a studio or an audience in like Counter-Strike or Rainbow Six, you will hear a million times worse things, which is hilarious. It's very funny a lot of the time.
Bro, I'll give you a great one recently. So the in-game leader of Vitality, Apex, the French former entry player, he had one where he played someone and he beat them. I can't remember if it was Falcons or something. It was some player that was like a former teammate of his. And he just tweeted like, been a long time since I fucked my ex. Which is like, mate, that's about 100 times better than I will clap him. Like, that's fucking fire, mate. That's spicy as hell, I mean, here's the thing. If you're APA, don't do this. It'll cause international incident. But everyone now is like, oh, look, they're going to have to mute him because he's saying you will choke. Like, mate, if I were him, I'd be typing some shit when I'm playing like the fucking Chinese. Like, who exactly does own this island, guys? just pop that one in there. You know what I mean?
Maybe not while you're in China, but yeah.
Okay. That'd be spicy, mate. That'd be spicy.
Where'd your gold go? Did Shanghai take it?
Yeah, just be like, why does China get 3 seeds for a tournament that's supposed to have 2? It's unfair. It's absolutely unfair. Just say that when you play in Maple or something. Let him fucking deal with it, You deal with it. You step on, you catch this grenade.
I mean, it was mild though, but I do like the cutaways in the broadcast. So when he hit level 6 on Aurelion Soul and just dumpstered Humanoid and he asked him if he was trolling, I did find that amusing.
That was funny. Yeah, that's funny.
But I enjoy APA's personality. I enjoy the fact that he just keeps on going out there and doing it. And I agree with the fact that he's doing it. Look, there's basically no downside to doing it besides people make fun of him on social media, which he shouldn't give a shit about anyway.
So why not? Yeah,
and like the upside is that you actually make people mad and make them play weird, which is what trash talk is always about, right?
Yeah.
So I think it's just competitively worth it. And I like the fact that even Impact seems to kind of be getting in on this these days too. He's rolling with it, which is very fun. But yeah, I think that's been a and like honestly, APA's performance has kind of backed it up because he really hasn't been a liability at this event, and he was the better mid laner in the Fnatic series, surprisingly, after Humanoid lost the fire or got LeBlanc banned. You decide. I do want to talk about Fnatic a little bit because we touched on them a bit at the beginning, but your point about them kind of always throwing. Another reason, like people will look at Noah and say like, oh, he's the one who needs to be replaced. But I mean, Humanoid had some massive leads in some of these games And he's so cavalier with his
Oh, it's
leads. Like,
wild,
he
isn't it?
feels like he has to overextend, make the play. He gives up huge bounties. Remember the game he was dominating on LeBlanc and he just gave up the bounty to Jackie for no
Monty,
fucking reason.
here's the analogy. Since you like to do this angle, I'll take it with you. Here's the analogy. It's not a thing nowadays because now, I don't know, sexual degeneracy is just fucking just par for the course in the modern world. But believe it or not, when me and Monty were youngins growing up, actually there was a lot of like shame surrounding sexual topics, right? Here's the analogy. Humanoid isn't the guy who just wants to like succeed, Monty. He wants to get away with it. This guy is doing danger wanks all the time. He's doing that thing where you know that, oh, is that someone at the door? Ooh, maybe it is, maybe it isn't. Let's see what they find when they come in. And you just go for, because I agree. Every time he has a big lead, he has to like at least like go. It's like he's taunting someone. Go on, try and take it from me. Take it from me. Take it from my hand. Like, and then if you can get it, it's like, well, shit, I didn't expect that. But mate, the amount of times he just gives you the way back in, it's crazy, isn't it?
Yeah, and he gets the leads. It's just a matter of playing them out. But Fnatic really has no idea. And then also on top of that, their lane swapping has been super hilarious. Like I talked about this on Power Spike, Thorin, but one of the funniest parts of that last series was, so it was game 4 between Team Liquid and Fnatic. And remember that Fnatic was subjected to lane swaps by G2 before most other teams experienced them. So you'd think, well, they probably have figured this shit out at this point in time, right? So I had to watch in game number 4 when we literally see that and Impact are in the mid lane and Yun and Core JJ are proxying the wave. So they crash the wave into turret. There's literally 3 waves of minions in the top turret. So Team Liquid have initiated a lane swap. They push 3 lanes into the turret, and then they start proxying the next wave. And the Chinese observers are basically mocking Fnatic because they have a picture-in-picture in the lower right corner of the screen that's just a turret with nobody around it, 3 waves of minions, and you just saw Impact and in the mid wave. And I'm like, is Oscar going to TP to this wave? No. Where was Oscar? I couldn't see. I was flipping out when I was doing my VOD review. I was like, where the fuck is he? Because he was covering the mini-map. Do you know where he was, Thorin? He was auto-attacking bot turret with Noah and nobody else, playing Cassante. He was just autoing bot turret, and he let 3 waves that were free. Remember, they could not have dove him, just crash into that turret. And I'm like, really? This is the way that we're going to lose this series? Right? You had a huge potential advantage here. And we can't use TP. It's like the cross map doesn't exist. So I think it's been really depressing to watch this. Like, people will talk about Oscar's glow up or like his Camille games, but what about his map awareness? Not there. So I don't know. I think this Fnatic roster is pretty washed, but unfortunately the GMing in Europe has been so bad that there's not even really anybody to contest them. That's what's depressing about LEC. It's that this iteration of Fnatic was somehow the second best team that we could have gotten here. It really is a 1-team region.
Thing is, though, I'll tell you what, BDS would have been even worse. So at least for that gave you the highs. You got to soar with them temporarily before Danger Wank fucking humanoid gets caught with his pants down, literally. Oh my god! Oh no! I've been naughty again. Oh, I've seen this too many times.
I don't know. This version of Fnatic is not it for me, man. Like, I don't think that they're going to be able to come back within the context of international play. And as long as they're hitting internationals, it just is more of an indictment of the rest of the region, in my opinion. So I think LEC has a lot of issues, and they need to concentrate their star power more. Like, it's outrageous that they could have spent so much money over the last few years on these various super teams and just have no results. Like, I think Carmine Corp, people look at the fan base and they say, oh, this team should be good. They have no money. They have no fucking money to spend on this road. They spent all their money on the slot. Now they have no money. Like, I don't think Fnatic has money, so nobody can create a super team, and the super teams that existed fucking sucked. Now we're just in the depressing G2 reality. And here's the other thing. It's depressing for G2 as well, because if there's no domestic competition, they're never going to be able to get good enough to challenge internationally. They have to have real rivals.
Yeah, but that's also where I'll give mad props to G2. I'm so impressed that they do manage to just shadow box themselves. Like, it's actually quite impressive
Yeah,
that
it
they keep
is.
their level high. They not only take care of business, but they come international and they they never punch his chance. Very
But
legit.
but here's the black pill take. They were able to at least go to Korean boot camp this time. Worlds is in Europe this year. So do you go to Korea boot camp there and then come back? Like if you stay in Europe, I don't think there's a chance you do well at Worlds. I think
Just
you
gotta
have to
hope.
go and get the better practice. So that's always the problem with Worlds being in a Western region is that the Western teams then have to decide whether or not they're going to actually go to Korea to boot camp prior to going to Worlds or not, which is a tough call to make because the Asian teams never leave before they have to. So it's not like they're going to come to Europe and you're going to have good, scrim opponents weeks in advance. That's not going to happen. Um, so I feel like that is one of the key factors of Western teams underperforming in their home regions. I haven't done the year by year analysis, but it feels like when it's in Asia, the Western teams typically do better. All right. So what else do we have? Roster announcement, which is that Tarzan has joined Weibo
And breathe.
and Breathe, which are both interesting additions. Like
I mean, the irony
Weibo.
is, think about what you just said about LEC. In LPL, you've just made another strong team there. Like, that region just gets better and better, mate.
Well, here the thing about LPL is LPL makes the best mid-season adjustments of any region, and then they lose worlds anyway. But I mean, think about what we saw. Gala joining LNG made it so we had 2 5-game series in the playoffs in summer last year in LPL versus JDG, and they became a real competitor for the title. So I look at this and like you're like, oh shit, like that's an interesting upgrade for a team that was already doing kind of well. I mean, they placed 7th, they were 8-8, right? But they did manage to make it to round 3. They kind of ran from the bottom of the gauntlet. They beat IG and LNG and then lost to JDG before they got to the double limb portion of the spring playoffs. But they were all right. And like that's the thing is these are players that I think can definitely push them up the rankings because they were struggling, and Breathe and Tarzan are big upgrades. And if you only watch Tarzan domestically, you wouldn't have known that he was fucking insane last year. He was great in LPL.
And you just look at that combo. Imagine Tarzan with fucking Xiaohu. Surely you're going to have a super intelligent team from mid and jungle. And also, the Breathe guy, if you don't remember on WE, I thought that guy was a stud, mate. He had some skills. He could fucking carry some games.
Yeah, RNG was also really bad in spring, so don't read too much into that. I think Breathe was okay. I didn't watch a lot of him, but I thought he was fine in the games that I saw. So I'm excited about what Weibo is bringing forward, and this is probably MSI isn't even over, so we'll probably see more roster moves coming through. Tarzan was one of the big kind of X factor free agents. There was talk about him maybe going to D+, but I guess that's not going to happen. So I do think Lucid stepped up in the playoffs and maybe D+ backed off after they saw Lucid's kind of improving performance. And Lucid was kind of clutch at times for D+ and LCK playoffs. So replacing him may not have made a lot of sense. But I think, this is one of the big pieces that's going to fall into place during the offseason. The Shy has said that he's not coming back this year. So there aren't a lot of big name free agents left. I think he was the biggest one. So I'm excited to see what Weibo can do.
Especially because actually at the end of the split, a lot of the teams looked better. Like NIP started to get pretty good.
Oh, yeah.
Obviously top esports, like in the second half of the split, we're just killing it. So no, the battle for worlds could be really crazy.
I mean,
the LPL is going to be mega stacked this summer.
The unfortunate thing is like Tarzan to NIP probably made the most sense to create like an actual challenger because Aki was kind of the weak link on that NIP roster. And, after we've seen Scout Tarzan, we want to see rookie Tarzan. I think that turns NIP into potentially an LPL title contender and potentially a world's title contender almost instantly. But at least he's on a team in the top half of the LPL where it might make a difference. But I am, NIP running it back may be a bit of a disappointment. Maybe somebody can like jailbreak Milky Way. Maybe Milky Way goes to NIP. That'd be interesting.
That'd be the dream. No, the thing is, the Weibo lineup in general, just look at the fucking name quality of it. Like, that's just good players, mate. Those are like some of the best players in the LPL for the last 3-4 years. So I'm certainly interested if they can get it together, because all you have to look, you've got a whole mega long summer split. You've got plenty of time, loads of best of threes. What is it, like fucking 16 best of threes is what mental. So like, you've got plenty of time to power up.
Yeah. So their new roster for you guys is Breathe in the top lane, right? Tarzan, Xiaohu, Light, and Crisp. So a lot of big name players there. I am very curious to see about that. The difference is that Xiaohu's more of a facilitator, whereas Tarzan, like, I don't think Scout is MVP without Tarzan being there, and Scout was like kind of the tip of the spear in the mega carry, whereas that's not necessarily Xiaohu's identity all the time. So perhaps this team doesn't work out synergistically. It's pretty big difference. That's why I would have preferred him with Rookie instead. But we'll see. Definitely an upgrade. Certainly going to be a hyped roster to watch at the start of the season. And I hope, we start to see some moves from LCK. LCK notoriously like doesn't make mid-season moves, which is always a bummer. Because there are frequently changes that should be made. And Tarzan will not be coming back to Korea, sadly, but we'll see if they start to call up any kind of reserves from, the amateur system, the tier 2 system might be.
Yeah, but the obvious one that sucks is fucking Zika still just plays in Hanwha Life, doesn't he?
Well, maybe they get Scout,
I'm so over
the dream.
So over it, mate. Just so over it. Come on.
I'm waiting for Rookie or Scout to come back. Let's go. Rookie, please.
Please come back. You can even do a sideways move. Like, why can't BDD just play in this team? Like,
yeah.
He's more than good enough. We talk about that team would be cooking if they had him, mate.
Yeah. Yes, they would. I don't know, the top lane situation. I just never have been a Doran believer when it comes to like actually Apex like play.
Bro, he should just tithe 10% of his yearly salary to fucking Zayas for making him. Like, that guy just, it's like if you're in like wrestling terminology, Zayas just put this guy over at WrestleMania every fucking year, didn't he? Like, okay, he's supposed to just be a jobber, but you're making him look like the champion, mate. What are you doing? You made this guy a legend.
Yeah, it's just that Doran's just like not quite good enough. And I would love to see a different top laner there too. Get Viper out. Viper to GenG, the dream.
Oh, that reminds me though, on that topic, remember, supposedly your boy old T1 Canner, Carmine Corp.
I know, it's so funny. And
how many years is that moved? That was like 4 years ago he played on T1.
He was all right on D+.
He wasn't bad. He wasn't bad. But even okay. So, come on. It's like, if you're signing that player, please tell me you got a time machine as well. Why are we doing this move? What is this?
And everybody's like super psyched about it too.
Because the team's so bad, you got to get hyped by anything, don't you? Yeah, you got to get hyped by anything you can't make up. Come on.
Like, I think anybody is better than Seiken as well. So I don't know anything about Vladdy, but I refuse to believe that he's worse than Seiken. And Vitality now has Linkus, and Douglas was the big problem on that roster. So I mean, there are some like incremental. Like, I think both Vitality and Carmine Corp will probably be better than the former versions of themselves, but. Is that, are we like suddenly creating G2 contenders? No, that's the problem, is that the talent is still spread out, and like bringing Kana into this region and then elevating tier 2 players is not going to turn them into the juggernauts that are necessary to take down G2 or to challenge G2 to further international success. So that's the main problem, guys.
I'll also say this as well. If we're doing roster moves and how you could change regions, the obvious one, but they just obviously, like we were talking about earlier, they obviously just don't want to spend money, Monty, is there a reason why BDS isn't ever allowed to change a player? Like, am I missing something? Couldn't you, like, keep the same team? I love the team and the coaching staff. Like, give me one extra player, you know what I mean? Give me one more star, and surely we're there, right? Wouldn't that team be cooking at that point in time?
I mean, I think Ice was really good, and that was like the last roster change that they made. He was one of the better AD carries in Europe, but, I'm not sure I think a lot of the AD carries that are in Europe at this point. Yeah, I don't know. Like, BDS obviously thinks that they have the greater than the sum of their parts thing going for them, but in the long term, I think you do kind of have to question whether Nuke is going to be the solution on this roster or Adam's attitude is going to be the solution on this roster. I still think Adam is still flawed as a
Oh, he's
player,
always
even
gonna,
if he
in his
has
own way, he's
improved.
always gonna be a liability. I mean, apparently both in
Right.
the server and out the server, so who the fuck
Exactly.
knows, right? It's not a
Yeah.
great sign, is it?
Well, it's just like you have to ride or die by him, which is like, it's not how I would want to play League of Legends. Right. Also, he seems like a dick. So,
You know, the problem he has as well is this. If he won, that would start to seem cool, that he's sort of like disrespectful and like DX out of fucking wrestling back in the day. But his problem is he also doesn't win. Like, you're an arsehole to everyone. You're a prick. You play it wrong in the game and then you lose. What do you want me to do at the end? Eat a fucking pile of shit as well. Like, why do I give a fuck about that? You lost, dickhead. At this point in time, you should be absolutely reamed out by everyone, you know, across the board, from your team to the fans to the fucking casters. Like, what do you want at that point in time? Because that's one thing I am also sick and tired of, is people where it's like, you're just your own worst enemy. Fucking self-made, Dardock. It's like, bro, no one's holding you down. You're holding you down. You're doing it.
right. And also, I mean, even though he's been better this year, he was a major factor on BDS's underperformance at Worlds last year because he's very limited as a player. And, you know, I think he confuses the global enthusiasm he received for the Gods champs as like a good way to get fame, where really it was like, yes, he won games, but it was a meme, dude. It was just a fucking meme. People just thought it was funny. It wasn't funny that you couldn't play Rumble and had to ban Rumble out every game yourself.
I actually
like, that
do
love
love though. I love when the Korean players bait out the Western idiots like that though. Like, they'll do an interview like, I'm actually very impressed with Adam's top lane. And they'll say, oh really? I thought I was always as good as it. Like, you fucking idiot. They wanted you to think
is a
that.
genius, never
I know. They wanted you to think that. As though Zhao, who really was like this, nothing scares me but this Parlofox. My God. Like, Zhao's being faker on land, you dickheads. Like, he just give a fuck about Parlofox. Come on. Come on. There's no way.
He didn't know who Palafox was until an hour ago.
The joke is, it's like that old fucking thing. He's like checking the back of the guitar. It's great to be here. Springfield, you know, like, he doesn't even fucking know. He could have almost fucked up Monty and said Paul Belter by accident. Oh shit, wait, that's not the right one. Oh bloody hell, you know, those Westerners, you know.
Guys, here's the ultimate test. Here's what you should do. If you really want to see what the Asian players think about the West, here's what you do, guys. Ask Ashley Kang to go out to an interview before the tournament starts and have her do just a quiz. You know, like Travis does those quizzes where he like asks players about old items. Just ask them about Western players. Ask them to talk, like, show them pictures of Western players and ask them who they are. Ask them about who is on different rosters this year. Ask them who the mid laner of Cloud9 is right now. I bet you they can't answer that question. They don't give a shit, guys. They do not give a shit. They're not watching these regions. They don't think the players are good. They don't care. They don't pay attention. It would be hilarious. Like, I bet, take a picture of a guy who's been there, who's there right now. I bet if you went into Worlds and let's say, I don't know, FPX qualifies for Worlds, and you show them a picture of Jensen, I bet you none of them know who Jensen is. I bet you. It would be an interesting and also hilarious experiment. But yeah, these people, like, they're so focused on actually being the best team in the world that they don't, and they know that it's nonsense to care about these other regions, and it's a waste of time to pay attention to them because they have much more formidable opponents and much better players right in front of them. So yeah, I don't know. Like, that all of these interviews that you hear are bait. I love who was saying this year that like the LCS and LEC teams were really good in scrims. I'm like, no, they're not.
Who said that? Who said that lie? That blatant lie. Come on. Oh, by the way, as if to confirm also, in my interview with Kazi, that last year was the worst year of LEC ever. For real, he said, Monty, in the winter split of last year, that Mad Lions didn't win a single scrim block and were even scrimming like ERL teams, but then they went to the final of LEC.
Well, it makes sense. Nobody expected them to be there. They looked like trash.
Even they were like, how are we doing this? I thought we were fucking garbage. They said they thought their whole team was like fucking just done after like 2 weeks. They thought they couldn't even Did anything. That's so bad, isn't it?
I
What
mean,
a shit.
sometimes when you don't have that expectation anymore, you play a looser style. Like that's real. I believe that. I believe that.
Also, I will just say this. If you're all the people, remember it was the whole league that did this, Monty, who was voting like Chasey, all LEC, first team top laner, how can he not be in the league the next year? What are we doing at this point in time? Like, am I missing something, Monty? If I vote someone all NFL first team receiver, he's going to be on some team next year. And if it's not mine, like someone's going to pick him up. Like, what are we doing at this point in time with these votes? Like, how can people just disappear out the league forever? Like, what?
So I'll do one last take because we have to fight. I have to fight this battle again because it's coming back up. Because this next week, Thorin, I guarantee you, my favorite esports narrative of all time is coming back, which is why don't we get a reset in the winners bracket
Oh,
finals?
because of all the LS shit. Yeah, sure.
Because of all the look, I like a lot of LS's takes. This is LS's worst hill to die on of all time. Because the thing that LS is doing is he's saying it's unfair. It's unfair. But he's missing the point, which is that it isn't designed to be fair. That's not the purpose. The purpose of this format of double elimination is to get the two best teams into the final and then to have the final be the final. And it is both ludicrously impractical to have a bracket reset, even in best of threes. And also the variance that this creates is enormous in terms of broadcast time. And his solution of doing a best of 7 where the winner's team gets an advantage is crazy because nobody wants to walk away from a final with a 3-3 game score and be like, this team won. I promise you guys that is the worst feeling of all time. It fucking sucks. Now, I do wish if, in the real world, we could have something where, like in Overwatch League, one of the cool things that we did was playoffs were like a best of 3 of best of 7s. That was fucking rad. But because you have a venue that you have to rent, and we're not popular enough yet to basically have a scenario where we can rent a stadium for multiple days and maybe not have games played one of those days, right? And sell tickets and all that shit. Yeah, but the question is like Ellis is so focused on the equitability of the thing that he can't see that the purpose is simply to get a good final, which doesn't happen at Worlds most of the time. It doesn't happen at Worlds. We had a shit
problem
final
he's
this last
missing,
year at
Monty,
Worlds.
is that in theory, the final is the be-all, end-all of the tournament.
Of
If you've
course.
done it right, you build to that point, you get the most viewership and everyone in the world watches. So the issue is, I actually totally agree with Ellis on literally, with both an autistic point of like, if you want to do it by the purest sense, it's supposed to be 2 tournament lives and you'd have the reset. Yes, of course. But I agree. The problem is, the compromise is, well, why don't we just have all the rest of the tournament be awesome like that, but then have the final be a one and done just because it's more exciting? Like, that's why you have to sometimes I think of esports more like UFC, because in esports, we go off eyeballs. It certainly isn't about the sport. It's not about the purity of the game. And so in the UFC, I always say, I'll never really hate on Dana White if he makes a massive money fight of marquee names, but it's not number 1 against number 2 in the rankings. Like, I don't blame him. His actual sport is sell tickets. And in esports, the sport is get as many people to watch the final as you can. So in a way, Ellis is right. It's just that I think you have to be reasonable and understand this isn't StarCraft in like 2001. We're not going to get the most hardcore format. It's going to be some compromise for all the Zoomer fans.
And there are advantages, guys. Like, I don't know how to say this any more times, but if you drop into the losers bracket in the first round and have to fight your way all the way back, you play more matches and more elimination matches where you just literally have to show strategies. If you play through the winner side, you play 3 matches and you're into the finals. If you drop out into the losers bracket, you have to play 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 matches. You play 2 additional best of 5s with your back against the wall. You have to show strategies. And for all of you people out there who are like, well, but that warms you up. If it was an advantage, then teams would lose intentionally. Idiot. Like, this entire argument is defeated by the fact that no team is going to lose intentionally. You show fewer strategies, you have longer times to prepare for your opponents, and on top of that, there is an advantage. It's called side selection. We have seen many finals where the same side, either blue or red, wins every single game of that final. So don't come to me and tell me side selection doesn't matter. It is fucking really important. And yeah, sometimes it's blue, sometimes it's red, but you get to make that choice. You get to control the strategy of the draft. And if you have first pick on side selection, you always get 3 times, even if you lose. Like if you're losing, you get 3 attempts to get side selection, right? If you win, you don't, but then you win. So who cares? It is a very powerful tool. And like you guys, I'm telling you right now, you think it sounds good. If we played a best of 7 final that ended 3-3, you would feel sad. It sucks. It's the worst feeling. It feels like nobody won.
When people suggest that thing, like just give them a game advantage, that just ruins the match. Because as you say, it's like, but it was a tie. Like, no, they won because they had an imaginary win from the upper. It's like that. That also doesn't work. That's why at that point it's just gradations of how unfair it is. The other thing that people miss is this, Monty. We used to have this as a famous thing in Counter-Strike. When IEMs were run by ESL in Germany, there was a famous thing where if you finished top of your group, you skipped to the semi-finals instead of playing like the round of 6 match, the quarterfinal as it were. And what would happen was for years and years and years, something like 4 or 5 years, every team that skipped got eliminated immediately in the semi-final. So that actually plays to what they're talking about here, Monty. Sometimes it can be better to be warmed up. But do you know why there isn't a universal rule that says it's better to lose, play an extra match and be warmed up? Because that only works when you survive. It's actually called survivorship bias. What happens is the team that doesn't get to the semis in this analogy or doesn't go through the upper bracket, but does do an amazing lower bracket run like TL back at TI7 or whatever it was, the one that does that, because they did win, they can be like, yeah, we were warmed up, we got our game figured out, we fixed it. But if they'd have, here's the problem. Every time they had to play an extra match, that was a chance to lose, though. So there's times where a certain X out of 10
also
times,
they had to show their strategies to their future opponents.
So to me, it's like you only say it was better if you win. If you lose, you're going to say the opposite. I can tell you they do. They go, I had to play an extra match. Then so people don't realize it. You're just cherry picking which angle you want. I think on aggregate, actually, this is the best system. They've had it in TI for years, if you don't know. So I think it's just the best. The idea is the final's a separate entity. Once you make it to the final, it's just a one-off match.
The evidence is just there that nobody thinks that this is an advantage because nobody has ever done. Like, why haven't you ever heard the interview of the team that went through the losers bracket said, yeah, we lost intentionally because losers bracket is an advantage. If it was a competitive advantage, people would fucking do it. It's not.
By the way, it's also only noobs who ever complain. I've never heard someone who was the actual like TI guy who came from the upper bracket who then lost, who was like, and besides, we didn't even get another life. No one ever says that. They just go, shame we lost. Sucks we lost. I've never heard anyone complain it was a top
because
four,
they know they had an advantage. Because you know you have an advantage going through the upper bracket. Like you should win, even in League of Legends. And so I totally agree with the points that are being made that it is not the most fair.
By the way, the other
purpose to be the most fair.
They're also completely intentionally ignoring that games aren't all the same. So one of the reasons, Monty, why we don't have best of 5 for every final in Counter-Strike is because it could last 7 hours.
Yeah.
So it's too much. Whereas in League, it's really hard for a best of 5 to last 7 hours, no matter how long the game is. Most games are like 35 minutes. You know what I mean? So the other problem is this. When LS says you can just do a bracket, yeah, that's because in fighting games, they can be over like that. It's really fast.
You have a 10-minute match.
You can do that reset. It's not as big a deal. If you had to do another best of 5 in League, oh, it'd be a nightmare, boys. It would. And so here's the reason why you also don't want it. Because logically, they wouldn't do it like this. They'd make it like TI and make it best of 3s and then the finals the best of 5. Like, that'd be even worse. You want it like this. This is the best compromise to have full best of 5, double a limb, but then the finals it's just a normal, no reset. You just play one match. That's the best approach we found.
Here's the other reason I hate it is because I hate tournament formats that test for different things. So what you're telling me is that every other important final that a player will ever play in is maximum 5 games. And now we expect this player to do a deeper endurance run of 6, 7 games. Like now we've completely changed the metric by which we evaluate players. Like every player has prepped for a 5-game series. They prep for 5 hours. And now a different player might be better, like have more focus for that extra hour or 2. And now we've just changed the entire way we play the entire League of Legends circuit for this one fucking match, which creates an erroneous result. So it's also not fair. It's also not fair.
This is also where, why do people just use hypotheticals? If you think there's a better system than this in a tournament format like League of Legends with games as long, just tell me what tournament it was. I'll go have a look. If you haven't got one, shut the fuck up. Because there's another thing I'm so bored of, is if you're going to talk about like LS he didn't quite do it, but he was almost backing up into the idea of MLG extended series, which I can tell you on paper makes loads of sense, is probably the worst format ever created in the esports history. Yeah. I used to even work where we had like Narda was in SK Gaming when I was there. And one time, Monty, because he lost like an upper bracket game, he actually won this lower bracket extended series. He had to just like 4-0 the guy because he started like, 1-2 down or something. He had to just 4-0 someone to win a series because it was an extended one. But if he'd have played someone else who he hadn't have played in the tournament in the same point in the low bracket, it would have been a normal BL3, which is like, what are we even doing here? What is this? Like, this is madness. This is absolute madness.
So I get it. But the thing is that what he's not taking into account for is that the most fair version is often not the most satisfying version or the most exciting version. And like we do actually care about fans leaving and saying like, that was a fucking banger series, not, oh, that was a tie, or I'm really fucking tired after 7 hours and the last game was garbage because no player has ever played 6 consecutive games on stage. Like basically his argument would have to be that we institute this in every single league in the world, and that now all of a sudden, but I think people will be very unsatisfied with this. I think the final is the final. You can't do it a different way because of the length of the game. Best of 5 is fine, and there are sufficient advantages to being an upper bracket team. And the purpose is not to be the most fair. It is to get the best possible final matchup, period.
I'm just going to put this out there. The timing of when LS tweeted this was when T1 had lost to BLG. So I'm just going to put that out there. LS, you're so predictable. It's actually bad for you. But I love it in some ways. You just keep doing you. You just keep doing you. Mate.
But it's okay. LS thinks that potentially that having a lower bracket run is better. So it's just an advantage to T1.
In that case, T1 has an advantage. They should win the tournament now, guys, if they're actually best. Logically. If Faker's the GOAT, win the tournament. You got extra matches to warm up.
I'm sure Faker was just sitting there after he lost. He's like, all right, boys, we did it. We got into the advantageous lower bracket situation. MSI is ours now. It's so ridiculous. I'm sorry. I really just hate these arguments. I understand also, where they're coming from, already but there's no practical application.
Almost every League of Legends final fucking sucked balls. It's one of the worst games of all time for finals. So there's another reason I love double elim. Let's have more matches than art finals. Don't you love semis? Well, let's have fucking like 3 of them. Let's just do that. Let's have more of those awesome games. What's not to love?
Yeah. And it's not that you always get the best finals in double elim. Like, people will be like, well, last year's finals sucked. And compare that to 2022 Worlds finals, which were amazing. It's like, yeah, it's not perfect, but more often it gives you the better match more frequently. Right. And it leaves fewer questions as well, because if one team just dominates the finals, you're like, well, they clearly were the best team. So especially if it's the upper bracket team, like if BLG just goes on to crush GenG and then win the finals, you're like, well, I have no questions that BLG was the best team in the world. None. Now. So whatever. It's all right. I just know these narratives are coming back, and like, I hate them. You guys know who listen that this is my least favorite debate in esports at the current point in time. Like, it's just, I think it's incredibly dumb. And it overlooks absolutely everything. And frankly, like, I don't want Riot to not do double limit worlds because these arguments are being made. Like, would you rather have double limit this way or single limit worlds? Like, double limit this way every single fucking time, right?
It's how I know that the T1 fans don't really think they're the best, mate. Because if you think you're the fan of the best team, you'd want double elim, so sure you'll win. If you want it to be the one and done, you're in the DRX spot now. You know what that lower bracket would be like if you had to run it back. So you're just fucking riding off the one and done, innit?
No shot DRX wins world double elim, by the way. None.
I'd be amazed if they'd even like beat the person they'd play in like the fucking whoever they played in the final. They'd almost certainly lose. I mean, what they surely showed everything. There's nothing left to do. Whatever. Same as CS though. I wish we had double elim for CS tournaments too. We'd have a lot less flukes there too.
Why can't we learn from years of esports history? Why have we gone back to it's like we're regressing?
And also the other reason why you've got to have double elim, in my opinion, is this. So the most famous double elim tournament of all time is the International in Dota 2. If you guys don't know, the International is probably the most notorious tournament for the best team of the year not winning it. Like the amount of times that like the fourth best team wins that tournament is mental. And part of the reason why is the pressure when you've got an enormous tournament is so insanely high. It fucks up people's brains. They play differently. Like the games usually aren't as good in the playoffs. So you've got to have double elim. If you had single elim, you'd have so many wonky ass brackets where, like, you know, the best teams finished like fucking fifth or something and like they're straight booted out of the tournament immediately. And how's that satisfying? If you watch them play all year, you want to see them get a bunch of series under their belt and play some different opponents. That's also what's awesome about MSI. You don't just play like one Asian tournament team. You can play like three. You can even double up and play them a second time, which, by the way, is what I hope does happen this time around. Obviously, didn't last time, but let's hope we do get the GenG BL just twice. Let's just have it twice.
I would love that. I would love that. Anyway, I think we're going to have a great bracket. We're on track right now for the best LoL tournament ever, so that's really exciting. I think the upper bracket matches have generally been high quality. We had some surprising ones as well. This next week's going to be great. You have any final thoughts for today, Thorin? I think, guys, due to time constraints with us this week, we're going to have to skip viewer questions, but after next week, we're going to have tons of time, so we'll be able to get to all of them at that point in time. So any final thoughts on MSI coming up?
I would just say I actually just do think that G2 top esports one's way more spicy than people realize. I think there's a very real chance you can have an upset.
Yeah, I'm hoping so. I mean, I think it could be really exciting for G2 to make a deep run. All right, guys. Thank you very much for watching. We will be back same time next Monday after the MSI finals, where we will do all your questions and break down the final week of the tournament bracket and what we hope we'll be discussing whether it's the best tournament of all time or not. See you then.